Chapter 890. In the last few days, Poplar Fruit even brought Kiki and Fong Bebe back to her house. He braced himself and was surrounded by her aunts. Of course, Poplar Fruit was quite happy. After all, at this point, it basically meant that Poplar Fruit had been gradually accepted by Fong Bebe's family. Fong Xiu's parents still maintained their last bit of modesty. They were neither cold nor warm to Poplar Fruit. Fong Xiu's other relatives were a lot more friendly to Poplar Fruit. The younger generation treated Poplar Fruit as their idol. They pestered him to take photos with them and asked for his autograph. The older generation kept asking about Poplar Fruit's personal information. They were almost like the police doing a background check. In the end, after the relatives went home, Fong Xiu's parents finally had time to talk to Poplar Fruit. I heard that you're going to Sweden to attend the Nobel Prize in Literature award ceremony. Fong Xiu's father took a sip of the tea that Poplar Fruit made, as if he was just looking for a random topic to talk about. It was unknown who had accidentally heard the news from his daughter. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep the entire night. Fong Xiu's father graduated from Shuimu University. He used to have great ambitions to become an academic. Until now, although he had left the teaching profession for many years and was getting further and further away from his dream, Fong Xiu's father was still looking forward to the academic awards, both in China and abroad. Yes, but my teacher is going to receive the award, Poplar Fruit explained to Fong Xiu's father. I'm just going to accompany him. I'll be his simultaneous interpreter. That would be great, too. If he could buy an entrance ticket with money, Fong Xiu's father would be willing to go to the ceremony. Of course, that was if it wasn't expensive. An English simultaneous interpreter? Fong Xiu's father asked curiously. He still didn't understand Poplar Fruit's capabilities. He felt that it was more likely that Poplar Fruit got this opportunity because of his relationship with Mo Yin. Otherwise, how could Mo Yin not find a better interpreter? In Swedish, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Swedish? You know how to do this too? Father Fong asked in surprise. Of course. Of course. He knows more than 10 foreign languages. Fong Bebe said proudly. Fong Bebe talked about her boyfriend's merits in front of her parents like a newly married wife showing off her jewelry. Did you forget? Mother Fong nudged Father Fong and said, it was performed at the Happy Camp. She was talking about the scene where teacher, he, Sister Na, and the others were counting how many foreign languages Poplar Fruit knew. As soon as Mother Fong came back to her senses, Kiki, who was sitting on her lap, pulled her grandmother's hand and opened her mouth to call out. The little girl was like a little bird waiting to be fed, waiting for her grandmother to tear white sugar buns for her to eat. These steamed buns were steamed by Mother Fong herself. She rarely made them, but this time, because Kiki was coming over, she specially steamed a basket of them. The steamed buns were white and plump, soft and fluffy. They looked good. The texture was even better. The white sugar that was kneaded into the flour was sweet, but not greasy. It suited Kiki's taste, and it wouldn't cause tooth decay if she ate too much sugar. Kiki loved to eat them. She had just finished one and wanted to eat the second one. Father Fong moved his gaze away from the cute Kiki and continued to say to Poplar Fruit, when you go abroad, you have to be careful. No matter how others provoke you, you have to endure it. You represent the country and the Chinese people when you go abroad. Poplar Fruit nodded seriously. Don't flirt with other girls. Mother Fong snorted and said, you men never change. The women overseas are so open. If Bebe doesn't keep an eye on you, don't go seducing Princess Charlotte. Mother Fong had done her homework during this period. She saw from Chindu and Chinka that when Poplar Fruit was in Bali, there was a scandal between him and Princess Charlotte. Although a lot of evidence showed that it was fake, Mother Fong still felt uncomfortable. Mother Fong felt that since he was in a relationship with her daughter, he should be more loyal. He shouldn't go around spreading these scandals and acting like a playboy. Yes. Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly, that's all fake. Fong Bebe stood up for her boyfriend and said, the Princess Charlotte thing isn't real. Poplar Fruit doesn't really know him. They only stayed in the same hotel and met twice. This child, she's not even married yet. but she's already protecting that man. Mother Fong rolled her eyes and said unhappily, "Bebe, I'm doing this for your own good. You don't know what's good for you." Kiki tried hard to swallow the steamed bun in her mouth and choked until her eyes rolled back. Mother Fong quickly brought her a cup of hot water and asked her to drink it down. Mother Fong scolded her. "Io, Kiki, why are you in such a hurry? Chew it slowly before swallowing it." Kiki was in a hurry to talk. Once she felt better, she forgot everything and started to chatter. Kiki is also a princess. Princess Sis said that Kiki is also a princess. Mother Fong looked at him strangely as Poplar Fruit scratched his head and explained the situation on the main stage that day. Kiki was still actively trying to harmonize and tell her grandmother how beautiful that princess sister was. See, men are like this. Don't look at how honest they are. In reality, you don't know how many things they hide from you. Mother Fong lectured her daughter, not caring that Poplar Fruit was sitting awkwardly in front of her. Fong Bebe covered her mouth and laughed. This time, she wouldn't speak up for Poplar Fruit. After they went back, Fong Bebe started to help Poplar Fruit pack his luggage. However, there was a little troublemaker who was making a fuss. Kiki kept running back and forth in the bedroom and living room. From time to time, she would carry her favorite toys and stuff them into her father's luggage. At first, when Kiki brought her Barbie doll over, Poplar Fruit didn't think much of it. After all, every time he went on a long trip, most of the luggage was filled with his daughter's things. Kiki would be more well-behaved if he brought her 2 favorite toys. However, after a while, Kiki became more and more presumptuous. It seemed that she was going to move all the toys in her toy box. "Uncle, tell me about your daughter." Fong Bebe turned her head and saw a plastic elephant falling on her folded clothes. She angrily pushed Poplar Fruit. "Enough, enough." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and hugged his daughter to stop her from making a fuss. "You can't carry so many toys. Kiki can carry them." The little girl proudly rolled up her sleeves like her father, revealing her white and tender arms. Last time, when she pushed the luggage, the little girl felt that she could do anything. It was not easy for Poplar Fruit to persuade the little girl. He stripped Kiki naked and took her to the bathroom to take a bath. Just as Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe were enjoying the last 2 days of Poplar Fruit's warm time at home before he went on a business trip, in a corner of Yangcheng, someone was brewing resentment and was going to give them a fatal attack. He was not Li Zichao. Chapter 891. The plane flew through the heat of late autumn in Yangcheng and arrived at Beijing, which was already covered in ice and snow. When they got out of the plane, although there was heating in the room, Yanghua hurriedly helped Chi-Chi put on a thick down jacket when she saw the snowy scenery outside the window. "You have to wear a scarf, too." Zheng Yujie took off her own scarf and helped Kiki put it on. She said, "If you don't wear a scarf in Beijing, Kiki will catch a cold." It was Kiki's first time coming to the north in winter, and so was Poplar Fruit. He had never come here in such a cold season before, so he and Fong Bebe did not think it through. Kiki is a penguin, a fat penguin. Kiki was originally very uncomfortable being wrapped up, but after she put on all the clothes and scarf, she looked at herself in the mirror next to her. I jumped up happily. She really walked like a penguin, swaying back and forth. She felt that she was very cute. Poplar Fruit smiled and carried Kiki up. He said, "Okay, stop playing. It's getting late. Let's go back to the hotel early. We still have to get up early tomorrow." Zheng Yujie grabbed Poplar Fruit's arm and pointed at him in surprise. "You're going to wear this?" Zheng Yujie didn't wear much today. Although her coat was very long and could cover her thighs, it was very hot inside. Her upper body was a curvy turtleneck sweater, and her lower body was light and long pantyhose. She was very confident in her figure and beauty. Of course, this outfit showed off her sexy figure incisively and vividly. In the big environment of the airport, Zheng Yujie looked beautiful and cold. But compared to Poplar Fruit, it was nothing. Poplar Fruit was wearing a short-sleeved shirt and a sleeveless jacket. His trousers were casual, but they were the summer kind. He did not wear the down jacket that Fong Bebe had prepared for him. "Don't worry, I'm not cold," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Zheng Yujia looked at the down jacket in Poplar Fruit's hands and snorted, "Don't catch a cold and can't go to Sweden." The down jacket was bright in color, which was not Poplar Fruit style. She could guess who had bought it for him. Ahem. Poplar Fruit felt guilty. Recently, his relationship with Fang Beibei had caused such a big disturbance on the internet. He did not believe that Zheng Yujia did not see it. However, it seemed that the other party did not want to mention it. Poplar Fruit was also smart enough not to mention it. Poplar Fruit's guilt was not that he had done anything wrong to Zheng Yujia. It was just that he thought that Zheng Yujia was so devoted to him, but he did not accept it. He even started to secretly with Fang Beibei. Thinking about it made him feel guilty. However, Poplar Fruit did not want to reveal this matter. Because of this, he might not be able to be friends with Zheng Yujia. Zheng Yujia did not accompany Poplar Fruit for long. She rushed back to the company and stood on the last shift. Speaking of which, Poplar Fruit's last translation in Shinda was finally published. Last week, on November 22nd, the day after Poplar Fruit defeated the internet rumors, the book and the movie went on sale at the same time. The success of Lian's movie was beyond doubt. Even the impact of Poplar Fruit's popularity was negligible. On the contrary, Poplar Fruit's translation was promoted by the movie. The moment it went on sale, it became a big hit. Only a week had passed, and it had already sold more than 500,000 copies. However, this only represented the success of Poplar Fruit. In terms of profits, no matter how well it sold, it had nothing to do with Poplar Fruit. When Dongxin Publishing first handed in the manuscript, they had already bought out Poplar Fruit translation at a price of 160,000 yuan. Zheng Yujia helped him get that price. Otherwise, with Poplar Fruit status at that time, he could only get about 100,000 yuan at most. The money he earned was shared between Dongxin and the author. The translators who worked hard could only look at it and sigh. Compared to the huge profit that Poplar Fruit earned from New Translation Road Publishing House, what Dongxin gave him was way too little. Of course, Mr. Mo Yin and Poplar Fruit were both phenomenons. If it were other translators or other authors, they might not be able to earn that much money. However, as long as they could translate works that foreign readers liked, it was possible for them to earn hundreds of thousands of yuan per book. And it was not a one-time deal. In the future, the translators would continue to earn money. In the future, more translators will live a good life. Poplar Fruit clenched his fists. Poplar Fruit didn't want to pull all translators under the banner of New Translation Road. He didn't have that ambition. Poplar Fruit had worked so hard to get the preferential treatment from New Translation Road Publishing House because he wanted to use New Translation Road as a starting point to bring about a revolution in the whole industry. New Translation Road Publishing House was a disruptor. They might cause the whole publishing industry to attack them. However, they weren't afraid because they were walking on the path of self-publishing and online marketing, which was rarely explored by anyone. As long as the other publishing companies couldn't accept the protest or even the escape of their translators, they would be forced to make changes. Whether the changes could reach the standard of New Translation Road Publishing House or not, it would be good news for translators who were engaged in literature translation. Poplar Fruit spent a great deal of effort to persuade Pengyu. In the end, he even shared 3/4 of his 20% share as compensation to the publishing house. In the end, Pengyu agreed to his proposal. It could be said that if Poplar Fruit was black-hearted, he could earn more. However, this wasn't good for the progress of the entire translation industry. It was also not good for the long-term development of the publishing house. He didn't tell anyone about this, except for Fang Beibei. However, Fang Beibei didn't mind. He didn't need other people's support and gratitude. Poplar Fruit only hoped that one day he could see the glory of literature translation. Poplar Fruit still remembered the news he watched with Secretary Chen Longjiang when he returned home at the end of April. Translators must be brave enough to take on the responsibility of promoting Chinese culture. However, Secretary Chen also reminded him that this should be his goal. Regardless of whether the country supported it or not, the strength of the literature translation team would have a positive impact on the spread of Chinese culture. Poplar Fruit hoped that one day, Chinese culture would also be able to reach the peak of the world again. Not only would it be accepted by the world, but it would also firmly occupy an important position. It wouldn't be like now, where young people watched American movies, Korean soap operas, and Japanese cartoons. And there wouldn't be any Chinese culture in the entire market. It could be done. Poplar Fruit firmly believed that this was not a dream. Even if he was just a small member of this huge enterprise, just a small stepping stone, Poplar Fruit was willing to work hard and fight for it. Chapter 892. Achoo! Kiki twitched violently, and then lazily lay back in her father's arms. Her little nose was red, and she was dizzy as if she had drunk a few glasses of wine. It seemed that she was not used to the dry and cold weather in Beijing. Although she only played outdoors in the snow for a few minutes, Kiki caught a cold. The little girl had not been sick for a long time. This time, her illness dragged on for a long time and did not seem to get better. In order to see his daughter, Poplar Fruit carried her to the hospital in the middle of the night to line up. Of course, he was reprimanded by Zhang Yujie, who came later. She used her connections to get Poplar Fruit to see the doctor in a few minutes. The doctor told Poplar Fruit that the child was fine. She just needed to be exposed to less wind, play outside less, drink more hot water, and get better nutrition. The doctor also said that Kiki's physical fitness was better than that of ordinary children. If she did not take medicine, she would be able to cultivate her body's immunity. Probably because of Zhang Yujie's connections, the doctor did not prescribe a single pill and let Poplar Fruit go back. This was really a rare situation in modern society. It was known that hospitals suck blood. Not to mention children, even adults who had a small cold would be prescribed a basket of medicine to take home. It was estimated that the person would be fine, but would be stuffed to death by the medicine. However, Kiki's illness brought another problem. Poplar Fruit had to take care of her. Zhang Yujie wanted to replace Poplar Fruit, but Poplar Fruit decisively refused. Not to mention that this sister was busier than him. Even if she was not busy, Poplar Fruit did not want this careless person to take care of his daughter. She could not even take care of herself. How could she be expected to take care of others? It was not good to find a part-time worker or a confinement nanny to help. First of all, Kiki would not accept strangers. Second, Poplar Fruit was not at ease. Recently, there had been a lot of shocking news about nannies not paying attention to children who had climbed into washing machines and suffocated to death. In order to take care of his daughter, Poplar Fruit tried to apply to the person in charge of daily affairs abroad, who was a leader of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to see if he could reduce the training time or let him take Kiki to the classroom to participate in the training. However, they were all rejected by the leader. He actually scolded Poplar Fruit. Which is more important, the country's affairs or a 3-year-old child? A 3-year-old child, my child. What does national affairs have to do with me? Poplar Fruit was furious, but he did not argue with the leader. He carried Kiki to the classroom. He turned around and looked at the leader coldly. Then, he looked at the Swedish teacher from Beijing University who was going to train the leaders and translators who would accompany him to Sweden. "Hello, teacher." Poplar Fruit was still very polite, but he was neither servile nor overbearing as he said, "This matter. I'm not targeting you. I just wanted to apply for leave to take care of my daughter who has a cold, but Director Lee didn't allow it. So, I want to prove a point." "Do I, Poplar Fruit, still need to listen to your training?" Poplar Fruit said loudly. His meaning was clear. "Let's compete. If you are better than me, then I have nothing to say. But if I am better than you, then why should I waste my time listening to your lessons?" The leader with the surname Lee came over and scolded Poplar Fruit for being undisciplined. Poplar Fruit only glanced at him coldly. He was not interested in wasting time with him. "Director Lee, it doesn't matter. Let's compete, and we can understand each other better. If Poplar Fruit is better, then he doesn't need to participate in my training. If I'm better, then I can understand where Yangwa's level is and come up with a better teaching plan." The teacher from Beijing University said with an open-minded smile. For the past month, who had not heard of Poplar Fruit's name, the students and teachers of Beijing University were all talking about Poplar Fruit's real level. Poplar Fruit's English was very good. He was also good at French and Spanish, but he had never shown his Swedish, so he was very curious. "All right, Teacher Han, you can compete with this little colleague. The few of us will be the judges. A big-bellied leader, who was higher in rank than Director Lee, stopped Director Lee from making trouble. Thank you for your understanding, teachers. Poplar Fruit bowed and said, My daughter is sick. This is an urgent matter. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Yonghua had always pursued the principle of keeping a low profile and doing things in a low profile. Although there was a saying to be low-key, but Poplar Fruit felt that low-key was the only way to make life simple, pure, and happy. Previously, when he participated in the Flash Dungeon, it was because he was too high-profile. That was why there were so many discussions and even criticisms from the netizens. However, at this time, Poplar Fruit did not want to be low-key anymore. He had to be high-profile and release all his abilities. He had to show his best in order to convince Teacher Han, who was from Beijing University, the best university in the country. How good was Poplar Fruit when he went all out? If one was not there in person, it would be impossible to explain it clearly with words alone. Poplar Fruit's spoken English was better than many native Swedish speakers. His knowledge of Swedish was not as deep as many native Swedish professors. Therefore, Teacher Han, who was still a normal person, was defeated when Poplar Fruit started to explain the details of ancient Norse to him. Not only did he win in terms of language, but Teacher Han's understanding of Swedish culture was also on par with Poplar Fruit's. This was supposed to be the content of the training. Teacher Han had studied in Sweden before, so he knew more about it. Reading 10,000 books was not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. However, sometimes if one read too many books, walking 10,000 miles might not be able to compete with it. Although Poplar Fruit had never been to Sweden, he had read a lot of books. When Poplar Fruit was talking about Swedish history, Teacher Han sighed and said, There's no need to compete. Poplar Fruit, you are more suitable to be the training teacher than me. Of course, Poplar Fruit did not take over Teacher Han's position. He only wanted to spend time with and take care of his daughter. If he became the teacher, then what was the point of this competition? I was wondering why Teacher Mo insisted on stuffing you in. A local leader laughed and said, It turns out that he is not taking care of the younger generation through the back door. He has already found a treasure. Old Lou, you are ignorant and inexperienced, aren't you? Another local leader laughed and said, Poplar Fruit is a genius translator. Almost all of the books that Teacher Mo sold overseas were translated by Poplar Fruit. He is a young talent. Poplar Fruit won the approval of all the leaders present and won his precious freedom. Although Director Lee still hated Poplar Fruit, he could only keep quiet. Teacher Han laughed and said, Poplar Fruit, if you're not going to teach for me, then go do what you are supposed to do. If you stand in front of me, I won't feel comfortable teaching. Chapter 893. Just like that, Poplar Fruit stayed with Kiki in the hotel for 5 days. During that time, Kiki's cold relapsed. On the third day, it was especially serious. Her muddy nose water kept flowing out, and Poplar Fruit had to wipe it for her every few minutes. If he had known that Kiki would suffer in the capital, he would have chosen to come a few days later and try to stay in the capital for as little as possible. Fong Bei was also worried. Seeing Kiki's dispirited look, she even wanted to fly to the capital to take care of the little girl. However, Poplar Fruit comforted his girlfriend and told her that Kiki was actually in good health. She was just fighting against the virus. After this experience, she wouldn't catch a cold so easily next time. Indeed, Poplar Fruit went to see the doctor again. The doctor's conclusion was exactly the same as last time. Fong Qiu's parents also got the news. The two elders were as anxious as if their own child was sick. They looked everywhere for folk remedies and folk remedies for Kiki. Poplar Fruit promised with a bitter smile, but turned his head and didn't try it. Are you kidding me? These folk remedies and folk remedies had no known effects. How could he let his daughter try them? The old man's kindness was appreciated, but he couldn't follow him blindly. Poplar Fruit had a good idea. He used his internal strength to strengthen Kiki's body. He named this method marrow cleansing and meridians changing. However, this method consumed too much internal strength. Poplar Fruit massaged Kiki for half an hour, and he himself had to spend a day to recover. Of course, the effect was obvious. Kiki's spirit was obviously much better. Moreover, the illness probably consumed a lot of energy. Recently, Kiki's appetite had increased greatly. She could eat 2 big bowls of sandworm porridge and amaranth porridge every meal. Don't worry, the child should be growing taller. Mo Yin came to the capital 3 days before the departure. He came to visit his disciple's daughter at night and said with a smile, "I think so too." Yang Wu laughed, "But you've been sick for too long. My heart aches just looking at you." It was mainly because her nose was bright red from wiping her nose, just like a small brandy nose. Kiki is fun. The little fellow tossed and turned on the bed. After a while, she raised her messy little head and giggled. "Talking is so funny." "What do you mean?" Mo Yin looked at Poplar Fruit with confusion. He didn't know what Kiki was talking about. She was talking about her own voice. After she caught a cold, her nose was stuffed, so her voice was muffled. It was different from usual, so she thought it was fun. Poplar Fruit laughed. Now, the little guy was singing and dancing again. However, after playing around for a while, she was soon tired. Kiki lazily flipped over on the bed, panting slightly. Yang Guo stretched out her hand and helped her pull up her clothes, covering the white and bulging belly that was exposed when the clothes rolled up. Ha ha ha! Kiki thought that her father was going to tickle her. The little fellow panicked and grabbed her father's big hand, rolling and screaming. She was like a little rabbit, nimbly burrowing into the warm bedding. A small head with fluffy hair poked out, smiling brightly. "Teacher, look at her. She's so naughty." Poplar Fruit said to Mo Yin with a smile. "She doesn't look like a sick child. She's so energetic." "That's a good thing. It means she's going to recover soon." Old Master Mo laughed happily. Thanks to Old Master Mo's auspicious words, on the last day before the departure, Kiki finally recovered. Her nose was no longer stuffed, nor was it runny. She didn't even sneeze anymore. After Old Mo had come to visit Chi-Chi once, he had been busy socializing everywhere for the past few days. It was said that he had even met with the new #1 chief once. Finally, Poplar Fruit had to pack up and prepare to fly to Sweden with the team. After that experience, Poplar Fruit specially checked the weather of Sweden on the internet. That country was in northern Europe, close to the Arctic Circle. The climate there was probably even colder than the capital. Therefore, Poplar Fruit went out and bought a few more clothes with better cold resistance. He changed into them from inside to outside. After all, the down jackets sold in the shops in the north were more authentic. At least, when wrapped around the body, one would feel warm all over, unlike the ones brought by Poplar Fruit, which always had a few small gaps. Before leaving, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie went out for supper. During the day, she was so busy that she didn't have any friends. Without Kiki with them, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie ate barbecue outside in the cold wind and drank Wanglaji. Poplar Fruit didn't drink, and he didn't let Zheng Yujie drink either. "Have you submitted your resignation application?" Poplar Fruit asked as he chewed on a grilled sausage. "Yes, the secretary approved it very quickly," Zheng Yujie said with some annoyance. "Anyway, I'm just a deputy editor. If I quit, there will be a bunch of people waiting to replace me. So they have found a successor for you?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Yes." Zheng Yujie snorted and said, "I haven't left yet, but he comes to my office every day and points at me, as if this is his territory. You remember my assistant, right?" Poplar Fruit nodded. Zheng Yujie continued, "She was picked on by that disgusting guy and scolded. If I hadn't met her when I came back, the little girl would have cried." "Didn't you say that you would take her with you?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "Yes, take them all." Zheng Yujie waved her hand domineeringly and said, "I just wave my sleeves and leave no clouds behind." "Huh." Poplar Fruit was so happy that he raised his head and laughed. The feeling of being with Zheng Yujie was completely different from being with Fong Bei. Fong Bei gave Poplar Fruit a feeling of love, pure, warm, and sweet love. Of course, this love also had a tendency to sublimate toward family affection. But Zheng Yujie was different. She was like Poplar Fruit's confidant. They knew each other and gave each other the greatest support. It was far from love. but it was more than a mutual appreciation of ordinary friends. However, Zhang Yujie was more emotional than rational to Poplar Fruit, while Poplar Fruit was more rational than emotional to Zhang Yujie. He didn't dare to cross the final line, which was a good thing for both of them, at least in Poplar Fruit's opinion. Will the handover last for a month? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. No, Zhang Yujie said disdainfully. Dongxin is such a big publishing house. It's not like it can't survive without me. I'll finish the handover this week, and next week I won't go to that disgusting place and see that disgusting person. That's good, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. You can rest for the rest of the time. You don't have to be as tired as a dog every day. Before you go to New Translation Road, give yourself a good vacation, or go out for a vacation. Zhang Yu just shook her head and said with a smile, That's not necessarily true. Now New Translation Road is in a critical period of development, and they need people urgently. Maybe you can see me in Yangcheng when you come back from Sweden. Chapter 894. The group flew to the faraway northern Europe and entered Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. It was a beautiful city with an average annual temperature of less than 7 degrees. I heard that the population of Sweden is smaller than that of Beijing. Reporter Xiao Zhang from People's Daily smiled at Poplar Fruit, who was looking out of the window with his daughter in one hand. They were staying in a hotel in Stockholm. The leaders and Professor Mo Yin had their own rooms. The accompanying staff members, including the reporters, were all mixed up in a room. Poplar Fruit was supposed to have a room with his daughter. However, he was also assigned a double room with reporter Xiao Zhang, probably because he had offended Director Li in Beijing. Yang smiled and said, Yes, but the welfare of their country is good, and the quality of life is not something we can compare with. Poplar Fruit didn't plan to argue with Director Li. He also didn't plan to leave the group and pay for a big suite. Although it felt good to be slapped in the face, if he made a scene outside, it would still be a disgrace to the people of Sweden. Reporter Xiao Zhang was actually a nice person. She was warm and generous. Seeing Poplar Fruit with his daughter, she wanted to help him with his luggage. After entering the room, she chatted with Poplar Fruit, worried that Poplar Fruit would feel uncomfortable. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. It was a staff member, the secretary of a leader. She smiled and said, Xiao Zhang, Xiao Yang, are you ready? If you don't want to rest, why don't you go out with us? The leader said that since we are here, we should walk around. Okay, I want to go. Reporter Xiao Zhang happily picked up the camera on the table, raised it, and pretended to make a click sound. Poplar Fruit, do you want to go? Reporter Xiao Zhang put down the camera and asked while putting on her clothes. Okay, let's go. Poplar Fruit twisted his arms and said with a smile. He picked up the down jacket from the bedside and prepared to put on Kiki. Oh, I'm going to get fat again. Kiki pouted. Because it was too cold outside, Kiki was wrapped up like a small ball after getting off the plane. It was inconvenient for her to move, so she had to rely on her father to carry her. When they reached the room, she was finally able to relax for a while. Just a moment ago, she had been jumping around on the big bed. Now that she had to wear heavy clothes again, Kiki was very unhappy. It's fine if you don't want to go, Reporter Little Zhang said worriedly. If it's inconvenient for you, I can go by myself. He wasn't worried about the language barrier. Firstly, he could speak English. Secondly, in addition to the translator from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the embassy here had also sent someone to guide them. It's fine. It's boring to stay cooped up in the hotel. Let's go out for a walk. Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki and said with a smile, Kiki, don't become fat. Kiki was still whining and acting like a spoiled child. Then do you want to catch a cold and cry all day long? Poplar Fruit pondered and even put a small hat on his daughter's head. Fortunately, he didn't agree to Zara's request for Kiki to be the spokesperson, although they had come to Guangzhou to persuade Poplar Fruit. If he agreed, then he probably wouldn't be able to let Poplar Fruit match Kiki to his heart's desire. Although Zara's children's clothing was fashionable and beautiful, fashion sometimes sacrificed protection from a cold. The child was too young, and she wasn't like Zhang Yujie, who could do whatever she wanted in Beijing with just a pair of tights. When they went out, they followed the group for sightseeing. The embassy had even chartered a double-decker bus for them to sit on and enjoy the scenery. Poplar Fruit and reporter Little Zhang did not go up to the second floor because it was filled with leaders. Furthermore, the wind was strong, causing their faces to turn green. There are so many trees. Kiki leaned on the window and greedily looked at the snow-covered trees outside. Grandpa Shushu is so old. Even his hair is white. Huh. Poplar Fruit laughed and did not correct his daughter's wrong idea. It was good to have such imagination. Sigh, Stockholm's greenery is really well done. Reporter Little Zhang sighed. It feels like the entire city is located in a forest. No wonder the United Nations Climate Change Conference was held here. Ahem. Poplar Fruit coughed and softly corrected. That's Copenhagen, not Stockholm. Is that so? Haha, I'm not good at my studies. Reporter Little Zhang and Poplar Fruit looked at each other and laughed. Stockholm has always had a close connection with trees. Poplar Fruit explained to him. The name Stockholm means wood, and Holmo means island. There is such a story. That is, the people who moved here in the past picked up drifting wood from the sea. Perhaps it was because pirates or the wind and waves broke the ship's debris, so they used the wood to build the earliest houses, Poplar Fruit said. So Stockholm is called Wooden Island? Reporter Xiao Zhang said with a sudden realization. During the early days of immigration, the conditions were tough. Not to mention the simple houses, many people did not even have clothes to wear. Weren't the first few groups of immigrants from the United States the representatives of the pioneers? Looking at the current Stockholm, it was completely like a modern international metropolis, and the simple houses only existed in the photos in the museum. The main thing is that the wood is uneven, so the houses built are weird and not orderly at all. It's even uglier than the shanty towns in our city. Poplar Fruit laughed. When a foreign ship docked, someone came over to take a look and felt that it was similar, so they could not help but blurt out, "Oh, Woodhead Island." That's why Stockholm is being called out like this. Oh, Stockholm. Kiki let go of the hands that were holding the window railing, sat on her father's lap, and giggled while imitating her father's Swedish accent. Although she did not imitate it completely, her tone and intonation were still the same. You imitate it so well. Reporter Lil Zhang looked at Kiki enviously and said, Kiki must have inherited Poplar Fruit's language talent. Earlier in the hotel room, he wanted to know where the hotel TV remote control was. It was Poplar Fruit who called the hotel front desk and asked. His fluent Swedish shocked him. The first impression that Poplar Fruit gave people was that he was more like an entertainment star after all. Reporter Little Zhang stretched out his right index finger, wanted to tease Kiki, but was caught by Kiki. Her small palm was just enough to hold his little finger. Reporter Little Zhang suddenly felt that the winter in Stockholm was wrapped in gentleness and warmth. She learned things very quickly, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Now she can speak English and French fluently. I saw your daughter. Reporter Little Zhang sighed. I can't wait to go back to China immediately and discuss with my wife that I want a child this year, and also a daughter. Isn't it all up to fate to give birth to a boy or a girl? Poplar Fruit laughed. But if we really give birth to a daughter, then she will have to call Kiki's sister. Kiki blinked her big eyes and said happily, Does Kiki have a sister again? The little girl often called others sister and brother, but until now, she only had one sister. Chapter 895. The people from the embassy were really good. The double-decker bus tour was very interesting. They didn't need to look for places on the map, and they didn't need to use their feet to measure the land of Stockholm. It was comfortable, and they could even enjoy the beautiful scenery. It was not known how the leaders felt when they sat in the cold wind. Maybe they felt cold and happy at the same time. However, Poplar Fruit, Kiki, and reporter Xiao Zhang chatted happily as they enjoyed the scenery on the first floor. Although Poplar Fruit had never been to Sweden and had never seen these scenic spots, he could recognize the Swedish language on the road signs. He had read a lot of books, so he knew all kinds of stories and anecdotes at his fingertips. He played the role of a tour guide along the way. Kiki and reporter Xiao Zhang were not only fascinated by him, but also listened with great interest. Reporter Xiao Zhang was even more interesting. He took out his notebook and took notes as he listened. According to him, these could be used as material for his report. He was indeed a professional reporter. Xiao Yang. Suddenly, the local leader with the surname Lu called from the front. Poplar Fruit and reporter Xiao Zhang looked at each other and hurried over with their daughter. Xiao Yang. Leader Lu smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "Come and talk to this driver." Just now, our leader said that he wanted to go to Sergel Square. Isn't that the Venice of Northern Europe? But it seems that translator Xiao Deng can't communicate with him. Translator Xiao Deng was the translator from a Ministry of Foreign Affairs who accompanied them today. His Swedish was actually not bad, but it was academic. Poplar Fruit felt that the people from the embassy were better than him. It was winter. He wiped his sweat and complained to Poplar Fruit. Maybe he is not a local in this century. The dialect is too strong. I can't understand. There was also such a possibility. Sweden was not a big country, but there were still some dialects, and these dialects had evolved from the ancient Norse language, the predecessor of Swedish. They were very different from the labeled Swedish in terms of grammar and vocabulary. Some of them could not even be called Swedish anymore. Nowadays, fewer and fewer people were using these dialects, but that didn't change their existence. When Poplar Fruit was learning Swedish, he had some understanding of these non-mainstream dialects. Because there were many scholars who studied them in depth, they provided a lot of information for Poplar Fruit. However, this was all in theory. In terms of speaking, Poplar Fruit had not heard many dialects, so he was not much better than the translator, Little Deng. He could only give a try. Poplar Fruit went up and spoke to the driver. Yangwa frowned when she heard him say the first string of words in Swedish with a thick voice and a thick tongue. Unlike the translator, Xiao Deng was mainly listening to the pronunciation, so he couldn't understand. However, Poplar Fruit was listening to the grammar. Poplar Fruit was surprised to find that although the driver's accent was a bit difficult to understand, the structure of his speech was still standard Swedish. It could be said that although the driver's speech was full of mistakes, he was still walking in the right direction. Moreover, Poplar Fruit had another discovery that he wasn't very sure of. Therefore, he tried to change his accent to communicate with the driver. Then, Poplar Fruit heard the pronunciation that he wanted to hear. Poplar Fruit smiled. He understood why Xiao Deng couldn't communicate with the driver. It was like a Chinese person communicating with a Korean or Japanese person in English. The Chinese people had their own Chinglish accent, and the Korean or Japanese people had their own unique pronunciation. When compared, it felt like the two of them were not speaking the same language. The difference was huge, and neither of them could understand what the other was saying. That's right. Not only was the driver not a local, he wasn't even born and raised in Sweden. Poplar Fruit didn't know what nationality the driver was currently, but Poplar Fruit knew that he might have been a Portuguese in the past, or even now. Portuguese and Spanish belonged to the Romance languages. They were of two different origins from the Germanic languages that Swedish belonged to. The Swedish he spoke had a Portuguese accent and even grammatical habits, while the translator, Xiao Deng, spoke Chinese. Both of them could understand standard Swedish, but when they heard each other's words, it was as if they were speaking a completely different language. They were confused and couldn't tell the difference. Poplar Fruit Swedish, as well as the embassy staff who had sent them to the car but had to leave midway, were all speaking standard Swedish. The driver could understand them, but it was more difficult for him to answer. As expected, Poplar Fruit switched to Portuguese to communicate with the driver, and the driver immediately laughed. He shook hands with Poplar Fruit and said loudly, "Ha! That's great. I can finally express myself comfortably." Poplar Fruit chatted with him for a while, then told him that they wanted to transfer to Sergel Square. The driver immediately agreed. However, they were currently on Kings Island. If they wanted to change their route to Staten Island, they would have to recalculate the charter fee. Poplar Fruit told Leader Lu about this problem, and Leader Lu waved his hand generously and said, "Tell him that money is not a problem." So, Poplar Fruit told the driver where they were going, then shook hands with him. The bus that was parked by the roadside slowly started to move again. Xiao Yang is still the best. Leader Lu introduced him to a few leaders who had come down to watch. He laughed and said, "He can even speak the dialect so well. No wonder Teacher Han said that he can't beat Xiao Yang." Grandpa Mo folded his hands and smiled. His disciple was praised, so he was embarrassed to say anything. "Xiao Deng, did you hear that? You have to learn more from Poplar Fruit in the future." The leader of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs felt embarrassed. He pointed at the translator, Xiao Deng, and educated him. Languages are the same. There's no end to learning. Not only do you have to learn Swedish well, you have to learn the dialect like Xiao Yang. Otherwise, how can you deal with a situation like today's? Xiao Deng nodded his head submissively. His expression was extremely awkward. With a bitter smile, Yang cupped his hands and said, "Leaders, please don't flatter me. There's a misunderstanding here. The driver didn't speak the dialect. He's only speaking Swedish. He's not as good as Xiao Deng. Just now, I was communicating with him in Portuguese." Xiao Deng was stunned. He looked at Poplar Fruit gratefully. He felt that Poplar Fruit had helped him out. At least, it wasn't his fault anymore. He couldn't understand Portuguese, so it was his fault. Poplar Fruit didn't understand the twists and turns of officialdom. He was just telling the truth. However, his explanation made the officials feel that Poplar Fruit was amazing. They all said, "Xiao Yang can speak Portuguese so fluently? That's amazing." There were even leaders who suggested that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs recruit Poplar Fruit. However, this was just a joke, not to mention whether they were willing to recruit an outsider. Even if they invited him, Poplar Fruit wouldn't agree. Chapter 896. After Old Master Mo landed in Sweden, the news in the country also rushed to report on him. Not only the People's Daily, but many other media outlets also sent reporters to Sweden. In Old Master Mo's team, other than him and his family, the person who received the most attention was Poplar Fruit, who had become famous the previous month. There was always a small group of people who looked at all the problems with a doubtful gaze. Even though Poplar Fruit had been confirmed by many reports and experts, they still felt that if Poplar Fruit could attend the Nobel Prize award ceremony at such a young age, he must have gotten in through the back door. Therefore, discussions about Poplar Fruit's family background began to emerge again. Some people guessed that Poplar Fruit was lying when he said that he was born in a rural area. In fact, Poplar Fruit's ancestors were all famous people. His father was a high-ranking government official, and his mother was a tycoon. Even if Poplar Fruit's hometown had to produce a certificate to prove Poplar Fruit's family background, it could not stop the malicious speculation. However, this did not cause much of a stir. Compared to the later matter, it was simply a small matter. What kind of girl was Fong Bei? Why was there such a discussion? This story had to start from when Yang Guo had yet to leave the country. When Gan Juanji saw the overwhelming news about Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei, he finally understood. It turned out that Fong Bei did not see his true colors, nor was it because their feelings for each other had faded over time. It was because this bitch fell in love with someone else and changed her mind. Because of this, Gan Juanji ran out and found 2 female university students to have a threesome. This could not offset the jealousy in his heart. When he saw Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei sweetly showing off the love rings on their fingers, Gan Juanji went crazy and smashed his computer. What was even worse was that when he went out to have sex, the image of Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei popped up in his mind again. This made him wilt. This was not the first or second time. Once, when Gan Juanji went to wash his feet, he was ridiculed by his friends for having weak kidneys. How could Gan Juanji not be mad with anger? As long as this matter was not resolved, Gan Juanji felt that he would not be able to return to his blissful life. However, compared to Lisa Chow, whom he did not know, Gan Juanji was still considered calm and had a bit of a brain. He didn't need to find Qin Shui's online promoter to help him. He could plan it himself and come up with a vicious idea on his own. In order to achieve the best results for his plan, Gan Juanji chose to endure. He endured it until Poplar Fruit went abroad in December. During this period, Qin Shui's accident and public opinion's doubts about Poplar Fruit turned into praise. It could not change the perverted thoughts in Gon Juinji's heart. Therefore, he finally waited for the moment when Poplar Fruit left. When Gon Juinji saw the news of Poplar Fruit's arrival in Stockholm, he couldn't wait to turn on his computer and send out the message that he had already written. He even used his own Weibo. Fong Bei Bei is very pure? Bullshit, Poplar Fruit. Let me tell you, she's just a piece of trash that I'm tired of playing with. Gon Juinji proudly posted a photo of himself and Fong Bei Bei when they were in a puppy relationship in junior high school. He even pretended to not care and was just showing off to his friends. Idiots, tell me, did I fuck a celebrity? Although a few years have passed, the feeling at that time was really unforgettable. Girl, let's have another round. Do you want to go on a date? Although this photo was taken 6 years ago, Gon Juinji's camera was high-end. People could still recognize that the young girl in the photo was Fong Bei Bei. This photo actually didn't mean anything. Even the most intimate one was the two of them holding hands and sitting side by side on the stone bench of the football field in the evening. However, people didn't need to analyze whether this photo, which wasn't considered a super photo, was a cover to fool people. Because everyone only needed to know that this goddess, who was once the purest in everyone's hearts, was also held by someone else. As for whether the rest was really bitten by a dog, that was really a matter of opinion. However, many people were too lazy to think about this level. Gon Juinji's Weibo was quickly forwarded, screenshotted, and so on. In any case, this comment quickly spread on the internet. The photo was irrefutable evidence. Even many so-called PS masters couldn't find any traces of PS. Combined with Gon Juinji's Weibo over the years, people found that this rich second generation not only liked to show off his wealth, but also liked to show off the women he had slept with. The number of women that appeared in his graphic Weibo was beyond people's imagination, and now, Fong Bei Bei appeared. People couldn't help but have wild and fanciful thoughts. They couldn't help but start to believe this truth. Some people on the internet were angry. They were angry that they had misjudged him before. Some people gloated and thought that Poplar Fruit was a pickup hero who only took other people's second-hand goods. There were also some Poplar Fruit or Kiki fans who lost their minds and jumped out to scold Fong Bei Bei. Trash, get out of Higashiyama University. Get out of my handsome, gentle, considerate, and invincible Appa's side. In the end, most people on the internet were irrational. Other than a few people who could think for themselves and could tell that Gon Juinji's Weibo was more fake than real, and there wasn't any concrete evidence to prove that Fong Bei Bei was as bad as he said. Everyone else was scolding and attacking Fong Bei Bei. Fong Bei Bei was met with supercilious looks in school. A few female students from other colleges even came to her door and scolded her. Fortunately, Fong Bei Bei was protected by Lin Xingshan and the other roommates, as well as the boys in her class, so nothing happened to her. She went home crying. Then, this time, she didn't feel afraid alone. She remembered Poplar Fruit's instructions. No matter what time it was in Sweden, she called Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's phone wasn't turned off for her, and it wasn't out of service either. Not long after, Poplar Fruit picked up. Sob sob, uncle. Fong Bei Bei's sobbing voice transmitted her grievances to Poplar Fruit's ears from 1,000 miles away. After asking what happened, Poplar Fruit crushed the pen in his hand. It wasn't broken, nor was it broken. The hard pen was crushed into pieces by Poplar Fruit's right hand. Gon Juinji, you deserve to die. At this moment, Poplar Fruit wished he was in Yangcheng. Poplar Fruit's violent mood didn't affect Fong Bei Bei. He returned to his normal self and comforted his girlfriend again and again, telling her that he believed that it wasn't the case. Fong Bei Bei wasn't safe at this time. Some irrational netizens were crazy. Poplar Fruit called Chun Amlin and asked her to go to school to protect Fong Bei Bei on his behalf. Everything else could wait until Poplar Fruit came back from Sweden. Damn it, there's still a week before he goes back. Chapter 897. After putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit did not hesitate and took out his phone. He first carefully understood the dirty water that Gon Juinji had slandered, then wrote a Weibo post. It was both a counterattack and to clarify and support Fong Beibei. First of all, it was my fault for not being by your side at that time. Secondly, I want to thank Beibei's parents and her middle school class teacher. You chased away the bad guys and protected the ignorant Beibei. It was just a young first love. Who doesn't have a past like that? I have one too. Pain makes people grow. Beibei, I didn't have time to participate in your past, but please rest assured that I will protect your future. Poplar Fruit was rarely domineering. He even had the arrogance of grabbing the collars of all the people who attacked Fong Beibei to declare his sovereignty over Fong Beibei. As soon as his Weibo post was released, the public opinion on the internet began to change. There were praises, doubts, and onlookers. At least, some of Poplar Fruit's fans were moved by Poplar Fruit and began to help Poplar Fruit defend Fong Beibei. Otherwise, others would attack and abuse her. However, because Poplar Fruit, an old Master Mo's schedule, he could not keep an eye on the internet and accompany Gon Juanji in his war of words. Gon Juanji took this opportunity to continue arguing about Poplar Fruit's unexplained matters. The media was also happy to hype it up, so there was no conclusion to this matter for a while. I told you to stay at home obediently and not cause any trouble. Are you not going to listen to me anymore? Lisa Chow was enjoying the news on the internet when he suddenly received a call from his father and was scolded for no reason. Lisa Chow complained, "Dad, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me." But I really didn't do it this time. This time, Gon Juanji jumped out to slander Fong Beibei. It really had nothing to do with Lisa Chow. He was just watching the fun and had no intention of adding fuel to the fire. "Oomph, it's good that you didn't do it." Mr. Lee paused and said, "There's something wrong with the limelight recently. Don't cause trouble for me. Otherwise, I'll throw you overseas and you can forget about coming back for the rest of your life." "I know," Lisa Chow said helplessly. Not being able to take revenge made him feel uncomfortable. Thousands of miles away, Poplar Fruit's Weibo post wasn't able to settle the domestic issue, but Zheng Yujia was struggling to find a solution for him. "I really don't want to help you." Zheng Yujia resentfully picked up the pillow and threw it at the wall beside the bed, as if it were a poplar fruit. She muttered, "Helping you? Helping my love rival? What's the big deal?" Ah. Zheng Yujia frantically shook her hair. She wanted to grab a handful of hair and pull it crazily, but then she remembered that Kiki said that poplar fruit liked girls with long hair, so she put it down. "But who told you to not be in the country?" She was bullied. Zheng Yujia lay down dejectedly and muttered, "If it were me, I wouldn't be crying and not dare to say anything. I would have kicked open the door of that Gon guy and broken his dog teeth." "Forget it," Zheng Yujia snorted and said, "Just take it that I'm doing a good deed and helping her. One day, you'll remember my good deeds." "Sigh, who told me to fall in love with you, my enemy?" Poplar Fruit didn't know that Zheng Yujia had done a good deed behind the scenes. He didn't know that Zheng Yujia had once again found Zheng Mingsheng, who was already the #1 leader in Guangdong province, and asked Zheng Mingsheng, who hadn't yet secured his position, to take action again. She talked to the parents of the Li family, who had a criminal record, and then Lisa Chow was scolded for no reason. Fong Beibei didn't dare to go to school anymore. Only Chun Amlin took her to Poplar Fruit's old place, so that she could avoid the hostile and even strange gazes. It also made Poplar Fruit feel relieved. He was worried that Gon Juanji would do something irrational again. Zheng Yujia finally figured out that all of this was directed and acted by Gon Juanji, the rich second generation. Zheng Yujia's temper was ignited all of a sudden. Lisa Chow was hiding under the protection of his parents, so she couldn't touch him. Could it be that she couldn't deal with a little rich second generation like him? Although it was impossible to uproot his family's business that had been operating for decades, it was still possible to find a few industrial and commercial departments and the fire department to make trouble for them. Not only that, Zheng Yujia also told someone to tell the chairman of the Gon Group, who was Gon Juanji's father, "If you don't make Gon Juanji shut his dog mouth, don't even think about starting your factory." It wasn't that Gon Juanji's father didn't know about his son's trivial matters. He just couldn't be bothered with it. Rich people could be willful. However, if he really provoked a big shot that even he didn't know who it was, Gan Juanji's father could only quickly call his son over and scold him, locking him up to reflect on his mistakes. Gan Juanji was very unconvinced because he felt that his sense of accomplishment wasn't enough, not enough to get rid of his psychological trauma. But in the end, Gan Juanji's father told him that the situation was not in his favor, so Gan Juanji gave up on revenge dejectedly. Thus, the netizens were surprised to find that Gan Juanji had deleted all of his Weibo posts almost overnight, and then he didn't make any more noise. It was as if he had made a big fuss about a big play. But halfway through the performance, the troupe had all disappeared, leaving the audience to stare blankly at an empty stage. The initiator had disappeared, and Poplar Fruit was also busy in Sweden. Other than frequently calling Fong Beibei overseas to ask about her well-being, he didn't have time to pay attention to the arguments on the internet. Both sides ignored each other, so naturally, this topic was left unsettled, even though Fong Beibei's supporters still had the upper hand. Even though Gan Juanji had inexplicably given up, Poplar Fruit's hatred for him did not diminish. No matter how others insulted him, Poplar Fruit would not take it to heart. However, Fong Beibei and Kiki were Poplar Fruit's reverse scale. He shouldn't have let him off last time. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Just you wait. Public opinion about this matter on the internet had reached its lowest point, and at this time, people's attention began to be attracted by the biggest news in China. This was the news that everyone, regardless of gender, old or young, regardless of job status, city or town, was paying close attention to. News simulcast even took a minute to give it a preview. On that night, 3 central stations, more than a dozen local stations, and many Chinese channels on both sides of the Taiwan Strait were broadcasting it live. The award ceremony that belonged to Old Master Mo and this year's Nobel Prize winner would be held in the afternoon local time at 23:30 p.m. Beijing time. Chapter 898. On the afternoon of December 10th, Poplar Fruit, dressed in a suit and leather shoes, followed Old Master Mo, who was in a black tuxedo, to the brightly lit and resplendent Stockholm Music Hall. This year's awards ceremony would be held there. Not far away was the former residence of the Nobel Prize. Poplar Fruit and the others had been to the Stockholm Music Hall before. It looked blue from the outside, and there were 10 majestic and tall pillars in front of it. In front of it, there was a statue of Orpheus, the god of songs in Greek mythology. As soon as they got out of the car, many reporters surrounded them. Poplar Fruit acted as both a translator and a bodyguard. He escorted Old Master Mo into the music hall. This was not the first time Poplar Fruit and Old Master Mo appeared in public. 2 days ago, Old Master Mo participated in the press conference organized by the organizing committee at the Swedish Academy. Poplar Fruit also accompanied Old Master Mo to the press conference as a translator. Although it was Old Master Mo's press conference, Poplar Fruit alone carried the banner of translation. He translated in more than 10 languages. Many foreign reporters could not help but point their cameras at Poplar Fruit. Of course, it was not a big deal that day. It was just that at night, some people in the fashion industry who cared about the Nobel Prize occasionally saw the news and pointed out in surprise, "Isn't it the Chinese model Poplar Fruit who shocked the world at the Bali Fashion Week?" As a result, the world was stirred up once again. Ignoring the entertainment reporters, Yang's performance at the press conference, which was able to deal with any language with ease, made people sigh in admiration. Some busybodies compared Poplar Fruit with stars such as Natalie, Emma, and Mr. Bean. Of course, in terms of results, Poplar Fruit, who graduated from China Higashiyama University, could not compare with big stars such as Natalie from Harvard and Emma from Brown. In terms of fame in the entertainment industry, Poplar Fruit was just a flash in the pan. However, there were also foreign netizens who disdainfully raised their doubts. With Leon's talent in more than 10 languages, plus his natural talent in mathematics as a Chinese, Yanghua is about to cry. As long as he wants to, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to get into an Ivy League university? It's like Leon has the talent to become the greatest model, but he has no intention of continuing to develop in his modeling career. If Leon went all out, all the top students and stars mentioned above would be blown to smithereens. However, by the time people began to pay attention to Stockholm in Northern Europe, it was already too late when the entertainment reporters began to pack their luggage and rush to interview with Poplar Fruit. The announcement of the Nobel Prize had entered the main topic. There were not many people who could attend the ceremony that day. Even the leaders who came along could only join in the fun outside. Kiki followed Old Master Mo's wife and daughter into the concert hall as a family member and found a seat. Old Master Mo naturally did not sit in the audience. He sat in the 7th seat from the left in the front row. Poplar Fruit sat at the edge of the front row of the audience below. It was not as comfortable as Kiki's seat. He only went up to translate when Old Master Mo received the award and gave speech. The hall was actually not big. It was really inferior to the Great Hall of the People in our country. Even a larger nightclub could completely beat it. However, the decoration of the hall was indeed very luxurious. The stage was covered with a sky-blue velvet carpet, and the inn in the middle represented the memory of the Nobel Prize. The background was also decorated with white or light pink flowers, and there was a small bust in the middle. There was no need to ask, it was definitely the Nobel Prize. The procedures for foreigners were simple. It was not like the opening ceremony in China, where the leaders had to give a speech for a few hours. The opening ceremony was the playing of the Swedish Royal National Anthem. Then, to the sound of Mozart's D major music, the winners went on stage and took their seats. Even if the chairman of the organizing committee gave a speech, it was only 10 minutes. It was very concise. Then, the first award ceremony began, the Physics Prize. Old Master Mo's Literature Prize was ranked 4th. Unlike some of the other winners, Old Master Mo received the award alone. Therefore, he had a full 5 minutes to give a speech. Of course, Old Master Mo did not give an impromptu speech. Before this, he had spent 2 days writing the speech. Poplar Fruit had also received the speech and had already translated it. There was also an English translator in the venue. Poplar Fruit was responsible for the Swedish translation. Poplar Fruit thought that he would not be nervous because he had seen the world. However, he found that the paper in his hand was still wet with sweat. He could not help but smile bitterly. He took a deep breath and finally resolutely stuffed the paper into his suit pocket. What's there to be afraid of? All the lines are memorized in your head, and even if the teacher improvises a few lines, you can rely on your own interpretation ability to cope with it. Yanghua roared at herself in her heart. People with strength have nothing to fear. If you have strength, you should hold your head high and not cower. Here, Poplar Fruit looked at his teacher and found that he was smiling calmly. He could not help but admire him. To be honest, Old Master Mo was not handsome. Furthermore, among the winners, he was the shortest one. However, the old man had an extraordinary presence. His small eyes calmly looked at the 2 physics professors who were receiving their awards. There was a faint smile on his face. Perhaps this was because he had been through a lot in his life. No matter how strange or solemn the environment was, he could handle it calmly. Perhaps this was the so-called master's demeanor? Poplar Fruit secretly set a goal for himself. He calmed down and enjoyed the award ceremony. During the classical music program in the middle of the award ceremony, Poplar Fruit suddenly made an interesting discovery. Regardless of age, most of the great scholars and people who won the Nobel Prize were like Old Master Mo. Their foreheads were bald, and their hairlines were extending in the direction of baldness. Many of them even had balding hair. This had nothing to do with race. Poplar Fruit saw many white people who were like this. Could it be that people who were scholars were so easily bald? Poplar Fruit could not help but make a malicious guess. Could it be that I pull my hair too hard? Although Poplar Fruit was usually very relaxed, he often encountered academic problems that required him to ponder for a long time. Fortunately, he did not have the habit of pulling his hair. His habit was to do other things while thinking about the problem at the same time. Looks like I have to be more careful in the future. I can't just pull my hair, and I have to pay attention to nutrition. Otherwise, it would be scary to be bald like these scholars in the future. Poplar Fruit shuddered as he reminded himself, just as he was letting his imagination run wild. Old Mr. Mo's award ceremony was about to begin after Emil Jonathan's clarinet solo. Chapter 899. Under the signal of a staff member, Poplar Fruit walked onto the stage from the side aisle. However, he didn't walk into the crowd's line of sight. Instead, he quietly stood on the left side of the stage, where there was an inconspicuous podium. Poplar Fruit would be there to complete a series of speeches by Old Master Mo. Although Poplar Fruit had been very low-key, he was still tall and strong, so he still attracted some of the audience's attention. One of the young women, who might have come with her parents, covered her mouth. It was unknown if she recognized Poplar Fruit, but she quietly raised her phone and aimed it at Poplar Fruit to start recording. Poplar Fruit stood there and suddenly remembered something. He turned around and asked the on-site director in a low voice, "Sir, later, when Mr. Powasberg is introducing Mr. Mo Yin, can I translate at the same time? You know, Mr. Mo Yin can only understand Chinese." The on-site director was shocked by Poplar Fruit's pure and fluent Swedish. However, he didn't immediately agree to Poplar Fruit's request. After thinking for a long time, he said, "This is against the rules. You have to know that you're not prepared, so it will cause a bad impact that we can't control." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "You won't doubt my Swedish, right? Since my country has the confidence to send me to translate for Mr. Mo Yin, then I have the ability to not mess up your arrangement. Besides, I'm only translating into Chinese. If my translation isn't ideal, I believe you won't be able to tell. So what are you worried about?" The on-site director pondered for a moment. He looked into Poplar Fruit's eyes and said, "If you insist, I can give you a chance. However, young man, please remember that if you make a mistake, it won't just affect me. It will also affect Mo Yin and the country you represent." The warning in his words didn't make Poplar Fruit retreat. Although the responsibility seemed to be heavy, Poplar Fruit believed that in his field of expertise, he had the information to do everything well. Before they knew it, the performance had already ended. The chairman of the Nobel Literature Committee, Powasberg, who was also a writer, walked out with a manuscript at the invitation of the host. There was no suspense, but the people on the scene still held their breaths and listened to his introduction to Mo Yin. The next winner was from an Eastern country that they were very curious about. Powasberg looked below the stage and began to read the script in his hand. At the same time, a strange but charming translation sounded almost at the same time. Everyone couldn't help but turn their heads and look for Poplar Fruit, who was doing the simultaneous interpretation. Of course, Poplar Fruit's voice was mediated by the equipment, so it was weaker than Chairman Powas's voice. Therefore, the speaker's voice was not affected. Only Mo Yin, his wife and daughter, and a few scholars who knew Chinese were shocked. Unwavering was one of them. Mo Yin is a poet. Poplar Fruit paused when translating. This was required by the grammatical format of the simultaneous translation. He tore apart the traditional big words and sublimated the chaotic and complicated individuals. Mo Yin listened carefully. He naturally wasn't listening to Chairman Powasberg's speech, which he couldn't understand, but Poplar Fruit's translation, which sounded like a poem. He originally thought that he would be able to understand if he pretended to smile. He didn't expect Poplar Fruit's unexpected appearance to allow him to truly understand the award speech given to him by the organizers. All kinds of handicrafts, blacksmithing, building houses, digging canals, farming, banditry. He knows everything, and he writes about everything. Almost everything in the world is listed under his pen. Professor Unwavering, who was below the stage, opened his mouth in surprise. He could understand Chairman Powasberg's speech, but he believed that even he couldn't blurt out such a concise translation like Poplar Fruit. This was a simultaneous translation. How did Poplar Fruit do it? He didn't get the script in advance because Poplar Fruit had suddenly decided to do this translation. However, he was able to translate every sentence as if it had been carefully crafted for a long time. It was so beautiful that one couldn't help but think about it carefully. However, Poplar Fruit's translation wasn't that straightforward. From Chairman Powasberg's speech, he found that he had misunderstood many things about China. For example, although the ideology and reform movements have changed repeatedly, people's sense of selfishness and inner greed have never been removed. Therefore, Mo Yin wants to protect the small individuals and resist all kinds of unfair actions, from the invasion of China to the tyranny of the Mao era and the craze of mass production today. As a translator, Poplar Fruit couldn't interrupt the other party and jump out to point out the mistakes. He could only abide by his professional ethics and read out the sentences that he felt must be awkward. Misunderstood? Perhaps our country's cultural dissemination still hasn't reached the top. If they can come into contact with more Chinese thoughts and writings, they'll understand that China isn't as dark as they think. They'll understand that the Chinese aren't as ignorant as they think. Poplar Fruit thought with a heavy heart, while translating and multitasking at the same time. Although I can't shoulder the heavy responsibility of cultural dissemination alone, I can do my part and lead more people to join our industry. Poplar Fruit thought to himself. The Swedish Academy congratulates you. I implore you to accept the 2012 Nobel Prize in Literature from the King's hands. After Yanghua translated the sentence, she stopped. That was because Chairman Pawastberg suddenly switched to awkward Chinese and humorously said to Old Master Mo Yin, please. The audience applauded thunderously, and Poplar Fruit also clapped with all his might. Amidst the applause, Old Master Mo smiled and stood up from his chair. He walked toward the King of Sweden, Carl XVI Gustav, who had just walked to the center of the stage with a wooden square tray. Although he was facing a king, Old Master Mo maintained his composure. He smiled as he took the tray with the 2012 Nobel Prize in Literature award certificate and gold medal and shook the king's right hand. Then he stood alone in the middle of the stage, smiled, and bowed deeply to the audience. Poplar Fruit, who had read the old man's speech, knew that the bow was to thank his family and friends who had helped him since he started writing. At that moment, countless viewers in China were watching him receive the award on TV. Poplar Fruit thought to himself, they'll see it. Chapter 900. Next up was Old Master Mo's 5-minute acceptance speech. However, Poplar Fruit was a little surprised because he realized that Old Master Mo did not have the original speech script in his hands. He could not help but feel a little strange. Poplar Fruit knew that Old Master Mo did not have a photographic memory like him. Moreover, he was old. If he did not have a script, he would not be able to memorize an essay of a few hundred words. Your Majesties the King, Your Majesties, honorable members of the royal family, ladies and gentlemen. Old Master Mo did not have a script, but he did not panic. Instead, he calmly began to speak. I left my script at the hotel, but I remember my words. Poplar Fruit subconsciously translated as usual. He also habitually imitated the speaker's tone. At this time, the other English translator obviously did not react and was slower by 2 seconds. Of course, many of the people present could speak Swedish. When they heard Poplar Fruit's translation, they were a little stunned at first. Then, they all started to clap. It was unknown whether they were praising Old Master Mo's courage or encouraging him not to get stage fright. Naturally, Old Master Mo would not have stage fright. Yanghua looked at him, listened to his next words, and continued to translate. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood that Old Master Mo did not want to speak according to his own script. There were too many words of gratitude to the country and the people. This was not what Old Master Mo wanted to say in a short 5 minutes. Poplar Fruit smiled in his heart. It's okay. I'll play along with you. Fortunately, it was Poplar Fruit. If it were someone else, they would have been flustered by his sudden attack. Originally, Yanghua did not intend to read the translation according to the script. Now it was just right. He also improvised and continued to translate. A lot of interesting things have happened since he won the award. From this, we can see that the Nobel Prize is indeed a very influential award. Its position in the world is unshakable. Old Master Mo's praise received a lot of applause. I'm the son of a farmer from the northeast of Gaomi in Shandong Province, China. It's like a fairy tale to receive such a huge prize in a solemn hall. but it's undoubtedly a fact. I want to take this opportunity to express my highest respect to the Nobel Foundation and the Swedish people who support the Nobel Prize. I would like to express my highest respect and sincere gratitude to the academicians of the Royal Swedish Academy for standing firm in their beliefs. Old Master Mo's language was very simple. Poplar Fruit also used simple and classical Swedish words to translate for him, especially the word fairy tale. A few words flashed through Poplar Fruit's mind. In the end, his choice resonated with many people present. Winning the Nobel Prize was like a fairy tale coming true. In this world, there were too many people who also harbored this dream and yearned for this call from a young age. Poplar Fruit was no exception. I also want to thank the translators who have translated my works into many languages around the world. Old Master Mo's words stunned Poplar Fruit. He subconsciously turned his head. Coincidentally, Old Master Mo was also looking at him with a smile. Poplar Fruit was only one of the translators he was grateful to. It could be said that other than the translator who first introduced his excellent works to the world, Old Master Mo was the most grateful to Poplar Fruit among all the translators. Their exchange of glances was also noticed by many people. Professor Mayueran was also filled with emotions. Without their creative labor, literature would only be literature in various languages. It's because of their labor that literature can become the literature of the world. Old Master Mo's short summary praised the role of translators to the extreme. Poplar Fruit translated it. Although he was a little shy, all the people who were involved in literature or cared about literature clapped their hands. Their applause was thunderous. Poplar Fruit was also honored. Of course, I also want to thank my family and friends. Their friendship and wisdom are shining in my works. Poplar Fruit continued to translate Old Master Mo's acceptance speech. The next sentence made Poplar Fruit hesitate for a second, which was rare. However, his mind worked quickly, and he quickly understood what the old man meant. He translated his sentence, which was also rich in philosophy and life experience. Compared to science, literature is indeed useless. I think, but the greatest use of literature is that it is useless. Old Master Mo's sentence could be said to be a classic of this year's Nobel Prize award ceremony. His sentence was not easy to understand. Even Chinese people might be confused by it. When Poplar Fruit translated, he did not translate it directly. He left the puzzle to the audience to figure it out themselves. In this way, the cultural gap was enough to make all the audience confused. He did not think that he was smart enough to fully explain his analysis, because he was only a translator, not a commentator. If he dissected the deepest meaning to the audience, it would also make Old Master Mo's speech lose its original height. Comparing literature and science, literature indeed has no practical value. I think that the greatest value of literature is that it has no practical value. The first use referred to its material use, while the second use covered both spiritual and material uses. The third use was the same as the first. Old Master Mo just wanted to praise the spiritual use of literature in a roundabout way. Poplar Fruit only removed the cultural misunderstanding, and his translation still retained the original philosophy. It made people feel that it was meaningful and terrifying. They could not stop even if they wanted to. Old Master Mo's sentence and Poplar Fruit's translation made everyone fall into deep thought. Old Master Mo also paused at the right time to give time to the audience. These words were not difficult to understand. After they carefully savored Poplar Fruit's translation, they could not help but give Old Master Mo countless likes in their hearts. More people applauded. They did not want to kick up a fuss, but they sincerely wanted to express their gratitude to Old Master Mo because his evaluation had sublimated the value of literature. Professor Mayueran spent the longest time thinking. He didn't understand Old Master Mo's words as fast as Poplar Fruit did. He didn't even understand Old Master Mo's words with the help of Poplar Fruit's translation. Therefore, he applauded loudly. However, he was not only applauding Old Master Mo, but also Poplar Fruit, who was standing beside him in a low profile. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Leon, your talent is actually so amazing. Not many people on the scene could feel how good Poplar Fruit was. They only praised Poplar Fruit's fast translation. Only Professor Ma Yueran and a few Chinese scholars understood that no ordinary translator could translate Mo Yan's words so vividly and quickly. Neither could they. Chapter 901. After Old Master Mo received the award, Poplar Fruit walked down the stage in a low-key manner. Just like how he walked up the stage not long ago, he did not attract much attention. Only a curious girl was holding up her phone and recording him. Poplar Fruit seemed to have sensed it. The moment he walked down the stage, he looked over with a faint smile. It was like an epiphyllum blooming in the night, so quiet and handsome that it was intoxicating. The girl blushed and put away her phone. However, she could not hold back the joy in her heart. With the tap of her finger, she uploaded the video to the internet, a video website, and Twitter to share with her friends. Poplar Fruit did not know, and she did not expect that the video would be crazily shared after she uploaded it. Many people recognized Poplar Fruit's identity, and even more people were impressed by Poplar Fruit's attitude and translation skills. Furthermore, the video was quoted by many foreign media. After all, this was a story for later. Poplar Fruit had completed his most important task in Sweden. His adaptability also prevented Old Master Mo from changing his mind. More importantly, he ensured that Old Master Mo's wisdom did not fade because of the cultural gap. The vastness and profoundness of Chinese culture and the wisdom of Chinese writers could be perfectly displayed in front of foreigners. However, Poplar Fruit's task was not over yet. For the rest of the banquet, Poplar Fruit accompanied Old Master Mo and helped him translate. Many famous people and scholars from the East and West came over to chat with Old Master Mo. On one hand, they wanted to express their respect, and on the other hand, they were curious about him. Poplar Fruit's strength was once again vividly displayed. Any foreigner that came over could easily deal with him. He alone was equivalent to a translation team from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Even if a dozen translators gathered together, they might not be better than Poplar Fruit. I feel that Poplar Fruit, with you by my side, I have received the treatment of a senior official. Old Master Mo said with a smile. When he chatted with Poplar Fruit in private, he did not have too many scruples. After all, they were on the same side. Teacher, you are overpraising me. Poplar Fruit was a little embarrassed. In the middle of the banquet, there was a small program, which was for Old Master Mo to give a speech. Old Master Mo had already written a script for his speech. Don't worry, I'll follow the script this time, Elder Mo said to Poplar Fruit with a smile before he went on stage. In the afternoon, he did not play by the rules. He did not feel guilty towards others, but towards Poplar Fruit, he still felt a little embarrassed. After all, he had caused a little trouble for his disciple. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just a translator. Teacher, you know my ability. Poplar Fruit smiled calmly. In the midst of the elegant applause, Old Master Mo, who was wearing an elegant Chinese tunic suit with black velvet and red lining, slowly walked up to the podium. Poplar Fruit, who was still in his tuxedo, took the microphone from the staff and stood upright behind the podium. He did not steal the limelight and quietly waited for Old Master Mo to start. When the audience quieted down, Old Master Mo smiled and began to speak. However, he did not look at the script. Yes, he wanted to start off with an impromptu speech. I'll say something that is not in the script. Poplar Fruit laughed bitterly in his heart. He knew that Old Master Mo was habitually not playing by the rules again. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to play his part and translate according to Old Master Mo's words. This time, Poplar Fruit used English translation. In fact, most of the people present could understand English, and Swedish was only the official language of the organizers. It was extremely difficult for people from all over the world to understand Swedish. Previously, during the award ceremony, Poplar Fruit used Swedish mainly to give face to the organizers. Now that the banquet was not so formal, Poplar Fruit used a language that everyone could understand. 2 hours ago, The wife of our school's permanent secretary gave birth to my daughter. This is the beginning of a beautiful story. I believe that those of you who understand Chinese or foreign languages can pass on this news to everyone and express your warm congratulations to him. Old Master Imo said with a smile on his face. To be honest, Poplar Fruit felt that Old Master Mo's speech was not in the script, so he polished it a little and expressed it in more concise English. 2 hours ago. The birth of a life is also the beginning of a beautiful story. I would like to share this story with all of you, and I hope that you can share it with more people to express our sincere congratulations. In China, people might scoff and be unmoved, but overseas, people were deeply moved by the birth of a child. Therefore, after listening to Poplar Fruit's translation, people were not stingy with their applause and blessings. The topic of my speech is the storyteller. Old Master Imo seemed to be a little nervous. Luckily, Poplar Fruit helped him with the translation. Through television or the internet, I believe that everyone here has more or less understood the faraway northeast village of Gaomi. You might have seen my 90-year-old father, my brother and sister, my wife and daughter, and my 1-year-old grandson. Old Master Imo said calmly. But there is one person that I miss the most right now, my mother, that you will never see. After I won the award, many people shared my glory, but my mother could never share it. Poplar Fruit translated these words in real time, and they could clearly see that some of the female guests who were easily moved had tears in their eyes. This was the first story Old Master Imo told, the story of him and his mother. The most painful thing in my memory was when I went with my mother to the collective farm to pick wheat. When the people guarding the field came, the wheat pickers all ran away. My mother had small feet, so she couldn't run fast. When she was caught, the tall guard slapped her in the face. Her body swayed, and she fell to the ground. The guard confiscated the wheat we picked and left while whistling. The corner of my mother's mouth was bleeding as she sat on the ground. I will never forget the look of despair on her face. The thing I regret the most was when I went with my mother to sell cabbages. Intentionally or unintentionally, I overcharged an old man who bought cabbages by 10 cents. After I finished paying, I went to school. When I came home from school, I saw my mother, who rarely cried, with tears streaming down her face. She didn't scold me. She only said softly, "Son, you made your mother lose face." Old Master Mo's narration was very plain, but Poplar Fruit's translation was very heavy. He wanted to be as close to Old Master Mo's tone as possible, but he was always affected by his narration. Old Master Imo talked about small things, but it always seemed to let the audience feel the unforgettable memories and longing in his heart. The order of the plot in the previous chapter is different from reality, so please don't think too much about it. Chapter 902. Poplar Fruit had always maintained a devout attitude when translating Old Master Mo's speech. This was because only in this way could he better convey his thoughts. However, Poplar Fruit was still a little lacking, or rather, his life experience was insufficient. That was why he was brought into the emotional content of Old Master Mo's speech. This was not a mistake that a top translator should make. However, to the audience, this did not sound like a mistake. Or perhaps they thought that a person who told such a story should have such an emotional speech. However, in Poplar Fruit's mind, this was a mistake that was neither big nor small. It was an unconcealable flaw in his perfection. A real translator should imitate Old Master Mo's calm expression and tone at this moment, and not create a self-righteous tone to infect the readers. Perhaps the speaker did not want to directly bring about an emotional impact from the tone. Poplar Fruit still needed to continue learning. However, at this moment, with Poplar Fruit's translation, the people in the banquet hall held their breaths and listened to Old Master Mo's speech. They had been deeply brought into the world of Old Master Mo's story. Sometimes I would imitate the sounds of birds and try to talk to the birds in the sky. Sometimes I would tell my heart to a tree, but the birds ignored me, and the tree also ignored me. Many years later, when I became a novelist, Many of my fantasies were written into my novels. Many people praised me for having a rich imagination. Some literature enthusiasts hoped that I could tell them the secret of cultivating their imagination. I could only smile bitterly in response. This was a sentiment that many writers could relate to. Even some professors who had achieved their current scientific research results because of their childhood fantasies or achievements also sincerely laughed for old Master Mo, just like China sage Lao Tzu said, "Fortune lies in misfortune, and fortune lies in misfortune." I dropped out of school when I was a child and suffered from hunger, loneliness, and lack of books to read. But because of this, I began to read the big book of social life at an early age, just like our senior writer Shen Conwen. At this point, there was a sentence in classical Chinese that was a big challenge for all translators. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was prepared. Even if he was not, he could quickly respond and translate it well because he had done research on classical Chinese translation before. Old Master Mo then introduced the creation process of some of his more important works. Some novels originated from dreams, such as The Transparent Carrot, and some novels originated from events in real life, such as The Song of Garlic Flower in Paradise. But regardless of whether it originates from dreams or reality, in the end, it must be combined with personal experience in order to become a literary work with a distinct personality that uses countless vivid details to create typical characters, rich and colorful language, and ingenious structure. Maybe it's because I've experienced a long and difficult life, so I have a deeper understanding of human nature. I know what true bravery is, and I understand what true compassion is. I know that everyone has a hazy area in their heart that is difficult to accurately define good and evil. And this area is the vast world for writers to display their talents. As long as a work accurately and vividly describes this hazy area full of contradictions, it will inevitably surpass politics and have the quality of excellent literature. Poplar Fruit found that when he read Old Master Mo's speech, he was far more inspired than when he listened to Old Master Mo's speech. Perhaps that was the case. Whether a creation originated from a dream or reflected reality, it would eventually return to the category of human beings. Only by having a deep understanding and analysis of human nature, and only by thinking from the standpoint of human beings, could it be possible to write works that could enlighten even the deaf. While translating, he was also learning and reflecting, like a sponge absorbing the creative experience and life insights of a master. All of this was much more valuable than the glory and honor he had gained by standing on such a big stage. Old Master Mo told a lot of stories, some of which were his own scandals, but he still told them without fear. For example, he told the story of a classmate who didn't listen to the instructions and cried while visiting the exhibition of suffering. This wasn't a glorious thing, but Old Master Mo still said it boldly. This incident made me realize a principle, and that is, when everyone cries, some people should be allowed to not cry. When crying becomes a performance, some people should be allowed to not cry. Old Master Mo's concluding speech received thunderous applause from the audience. Of course, people didn't affirm Old Master Mo's whistleblowing, but they affirmed Old Master Mo's honesty and self-reflection. After I won the Nobel Prize in Literature, it caused some controversy. At first, I thought that the object of controversy was me, but gradually, I felt that the object of controversy was someone who had nothing to do with me. I was like a person watching a show, watching everyone's performance. For a writer, the best way to speak is to write. I wrote all the words that I should say in my works. Words spoken with the mouth will scatter with the wind, but words written with a pen will never be erased. I hope that you can patiently read my book. Of course, I have no right to force you to read my book. Even if you read my book, I don't expect you to change your opinion of me. There is no writer in the world who can make all the readers like him. This is even more so in today's era. Old Master Mo said all this in a very calm tone. Just as he said, it was as if he was standing on the side and watching himself, a person who seemed to have nothing to do with him perform. However, His magnanimity had won the admiration of the audience. I'm a storyteller. Because of my storytelling, I won the Nobel Prize in Literature. After I won the prize, many wonderful stories happened. These stories made me believe that truth and justice exist. In the years to come, I will continue to tell my story. Thank you. Old Master Imo ended his long speech that lasted more than half an hour with a few short sentences. Although it lasted for a long time, no one was tired of it. They listened attentively to Poplar Fruit's translation. Finally, with warm and long applause, they expressed their respect for an old writer who had worked hard for the literary industry for many years. Poplar Fruit also stood at the back and applauded thoughtfully. The greatest use of literature is that it is useless. The charm of literature is really great. Poplar Fruit said softly in his heart, "Teacher, I also want to be a storyteller." Chapter 903. Nice to meet you, Leon. Poplar Fruit wasn't an important person in the first place. Although he translated for Mo Yin, most of the people's attention was still on Mo Yin and the other Nobel Prize winners. Yang took a break and stood at the side of the buffet area to eat some food. To his surprise, someone greeted him in fluent Mandarin. He turned around and saw a white-haired old man standing in front of him. Poplar Fruit didn't mistake him for a Chinese. After all, he had a Caucasian face. "Professor Ma Yuan? Nice to meet you." Poplar Fruit was surprised. He hurriedly bent down and bowed to the old man. The old man was quite tall. However, due to his age, his body was a little hunched. Poplar Fruit bent down and put his head at the same level as the old man. You actually recognized me?" Professor Ma Yuan said with a smile. "Did you do your homework before coming to Sweden?" Yang smiled and said, "Since I'm participating in such a grand conference, of course I have to do my homework beforehand. However, I've read a lot of your works and translations when I was learning Swedish, so I know a little about you." He spoke in Mandarin with Professor Ma Yuan mainly, because it was Professor Ma Yuan's field. He would be happy to speak in Mandarin with him. "Really? Which of my works have you read?" Professor Ma Yuan asked with interest. "I have read all of your translations, including the 1983 Swedish translation of Beidou and Gu Cheng's poem, The Shore and the Spoiled Child. Your academic works include The Responsibility Forms of Interrogative Sentence Structures and Journey to the West, a study of the pronunciation of Western China." Poplar Fruit counted with his fingers and narrated to Professor Ma Yuan. Poplar Fruit's expression was very excited. It was very different from the calmness he had when he was translating. It was because he had met his idol. Poplar Fruit did not worship celebrities, nor did he chase after them. However, he had his own idols, and most of them were in the academic field. Professor Ma Yuan was one of them. Professor Ma Yuan was deeply interested in Chinese culture. He was the one who truly expanded the field of sinology in Europe from archaeology and linguistics to literature, and introduced a large number of Chinese literary works to Europe. It could be said that in terms of cultural dissemination, Poplar Fruit's evaluation of his decades, and even more than half a century of persistent promotion of Chinese literature, had even surpassed greatness. In fact, more than 20 years ago, in 1988, Professor Ma Yuan had always thought that the Nobel Prize for Literature should be awarded to Mr. Shen Kongwen, a writer who had stopped writing since the 1950s, but whose works before that were already great enough. Unfortunately, Mr. Shen Kongwen passed away in 1988. Professor Ma Yuan, who received the news, called the Swedish cultural counselor in China. However, the other party did not know Mr. Shen Kongwen. Because of this, Professor Ma Yuan angrily hung up the phone. Professor Ma Yuan even tried to persuade the other judges to make an exception and award the award to someone who had already passed away. However, he did not succeed after many attempts. In the end, the 64-year-old Professor Ma Yuan walked out of the conference room in tears. Whether it was Professor Ma Yuan's achievements or his attitude toward Chinese culture toward Mr. Shen Kongwen, Poplar Fruit had always been in awe of this name. "Okay, you don't have to read it anymore." The wrinkles on Professor Ma Yuan's face bloomed. He smiled and said, "I believe that you did read what I wrote. I didn't come here to test you on this. I was curious and surprised by your wonderful translation performance today, so I came to see a talented young man like you. You flatter me. Poplar Fruit quickly bowed and thanked him. Actually, I read the speech in advance, so I didn't encounter any difficult problems during the translation. Everyone else wanted to take the credit for themselves, but Poplar Fruit did not want to. He tried his best to explain, as if he was worried that Professor Mayueran would misunderstand. Humility. Professor Mayueran pointed his finger at Poplar Fruit and said with a smile, "Humility is a virtue. I know that you Chinese like to be humble, but in Sweden, you should do as the Romans do and take your own achievements seriously. I, Professor Mayueran, have a pair of good eyes. You might have something to prepare tonight, but the translation in the afternoon was all improvised by you, right?" Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. He scratched his head embarrassedly and said with a smile, "Professor, you really have a sharp eye. You're flattering me?" Although Professor Mayueran was old, he was still in good spirits. He laughed and used a Chinese word to tease Poplar Fruit, just like an old urchin. "Haha, Professor, your Chinese is really smooth," Poplar Fruit said with admiration. "It's never too old to learn." Professor Mayueran mischievously continued to show off his Chinese skills. "Although I'm not Chinese, I've lived for more than 80 years. I've eaten more rice than you have walked, so it's not surprising that I can learn better. You, on the other hand." Professor Mayueran smiled and said, "Leon, I think you're very outstanding. It's not because you've achieved something great, but because you're able to master Swedish and many other languages so well at your age. That's amazing." Although the grammar was very standard, Professor Mayueran's speech was a little incoherent. Perhaps it was because he was old. After all, there were not many people in the world who could still stand and speak. "I'm very honored to have your recognition," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Languages are my hobby and research direction. It's the same for Swedish. I like this language very much, not only because of its beauty, but also because it has inspired me a lot in my academic research." Poplar Fruit briefly explained his research on translation to Professor Mayueran. Professor Mayueran nodded and said, "Leon, you're really amazing to be able to draw inferences from one example. Today, I just wanted to see a translator who could translate Swedish so well." Professor Mayueran smiled and said, "I didn't expect to find a future academic. I really hope that I can see the day when you become a new generation of academic masters in China." It was probably very difficult. After all, Professor Mayueran was already 80 years old. No one knew the limits of his lifespan. However, it was not certain. If he could live to 99 years old like Master Ji, then there was really hope. "When I go back, I'll definitely remember your recognition and expectations," Poplar Fruit said with a slightly serious tone. "I believe that day will definitely come." Professor Mayueran didn't chat much with Poplar Fruit. He was old, and his mental state couldn't support chatting for too long. With the help of his assistant, Professor Mayueran left Poplar Fruit with his faith and blessings before bidding farewell to him. Chapter 904. After receiving the award, Old Master Imo naturally did not return to China immediately. He still had 2 days of official activities in Sweden. As the translator, Poplar Fruit naturally had to accompany him throughout the whole process. During this period, Poplar Fruit would call back whenever he was free to take care of Fong Beibei, who had been scolded because of Gan Juanji. Fong Beibei's situation was much better than when she had been scolded by her classmates. On one hand, Poplar Fruit's care and consideration made her feel relieved. As long as her boyfriend trusted her, other people's sarcastic remarks were nothing. On the other hand, for some reason, the arrogant and crazy Gan Juanji had also stopped. From the internet, it could be seen that netizens' scolding of Fong Beibei had decreased a lot. Fong Beibei was also relieved. Fong Beibei still did not go back to class. Although Gan Juanji had stopped, there were still some people who were jealous of Fong Beibei's popularity. Poplar Fruit was worried about his girlfriend's safety and mood, so he asked her to take a week off. Fortunately, Fong Beibei had won the award. The school was much more lenient toward her. If it had been an ordinary student, it would have been extremely difficult to ask for leave. One would even give up on the idea after seeing the complicated procedures. Besides Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit also called Fong Beibei's parents, who had been worried about her. The two old people's attitudes towards Poplar Fruit were still a little complicated. Previously, Kiki had completely rejected Poplar Fruit. Even though they had accepted Kiki later, they were still a little unhappy. Of course, they would not be angry at Kiki, so they could only let Poplar Fruit bear this unhappiness. Fong Beibei's online public opinion crisis had a little impact on the two old people's lives. When they walked on the street, the neighbors they knew would give them strange looks. Although they didn't say it directly, the two old men knew what they were secretly discussing. The two elders were also worried that Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei would break up because of this incident. It was not that they were obsessed with Poplar Fruit, but Fong Beibei could not take a second blow. Besides, if the news of the breakup were spread, who would dare to take their daughter as their daughter-in-law? "Uncle Andy, don't worry," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I'm clear about this. Isn't it just someone deliberately slandering our Beibei? We must be united against the enemy." Fong Beibei was fine, and Poplar Fruit could finally rest assured. Although he did not say that he would let go of Gan Juanji, his main energy at the moment was still on old Mo, and he also had to deal with the entertainment reporters from all over the world who came to find him from thousands of miles away. Poplar Fruit was very popular abroad in early October. The attention of foreigners on Poplar Fruit gradually calmed down because Poplar Fruit himself disappeared. However, less than 2 months later, Poplar Fruit came back. This time, he had changed his appearance. He was no longer the handsome male model with slightly curly hair. Poplar Fruit had turned into a long-legged interpreter in a suit. Especially after the video of Poplar Fruit translating at the awards ceremony and banquet was uploaded to YouTube, people finally began to take seriously the words that Poplar Fruit had said before. And these words, that he had his own ideals and his own pursuits, were once beautifully ignored by people. "He's still so handsome that I can't breathe." Many female fans from South Korea and Japan replied, with strange symbols below. Their aesthetic standards were not much different from the Chinese people's, and they could not help but love Poplar Fruit. They did not hesitate to go to China's social networks and painstakingly register an account. Then, they followed Poplar Fruit's Weibo. It was not that Poplar Fruit did not have Twitter, but he rarely used it. The discussions that compared Poplar Fruit to Western top students gradually changed their one-sided evaluation. From the video, other than the fact that Poplar Fruit's education was a little lacking, it seemed that he did have the chance to become a better top student. Although the entertainment reporters were very busy, they won in numbers. Therefore, such a situation often occurred. If Old Master Mo participated in an official event with other Nobel Prize winners, the reporters' interviews would usually be evenly distributed. Old Master Mo would even receive fewer interviews than the others. However, after the award ceremony, people realized that Old Master Mo was surrounded by too many reporters. Compared to him, the other Nobel Prize winners were not as popular. Of course, they did not know about the awkwardness between Poplar Fruit and Old Master Mo. Old Master Mo was supposed to be the main character, but the microphones were all extended to Poplar Fruit, who was beside Old Master Mo. These were all entertainment reporters. They were originally there to interview Poplar Fruit. Only those who could not squeeze to Poplar Fruit's side turned to ask Old Master Mo. "Old Master, I heard that you're the winner of this year's Nobel Prize in Literature. May I ask, what do you think of Leon? Can he achieve more brilliance on the path of translation and literature than on the path of modeling?" Although they were asking Old Master Mo, they were actually asking questions about Poplar Fruit. Fortunately, these reporters spoke in a strange foreign language. Old Master Mo could not understand them at all, so it saved him from the awkwardness. In order to appease these entertainment reporters who would not give up until they reached their goal, Poplar Fruit later got Old Master Mo's consent and held a press conference with the help of the embassy. They asked a lot of questions, such as when will I return to the modeling stage? After Poplar Fruit came back, he smiled and shook his head. He said to Old Master Mo, but I told them that I don't plan to be a model anymore. In fact, they also asked a lot of gossipy questions, such as how Poplar Fruit felt about his girlfriend being slandered in China. God knew how they found out about rumors that should only be spread in China. Fortunately, foreigners were more open-minded. They did not think that first love was a big deal, so Poplar Fruit was not angered by them. Focus on your studies. Not only do you have to translate, but you also have to spend some time learning how to write. Old Master Mo reminded him, don't just follow me around and think about translating. You should listen to the lectures that I give and the experience that I introduce. Yes, yes. Poplar Fruit laughed. I also want to be a storyteller. When I go back, I will sort out some of the articles that I have written recently. Teacher, please give me some guidance. That's a good attitude to learn. Old Master Mo nodded with satisfaction. By the way, teacher, Poplar Fruit saw that Old Master Mo was happy, so he brought up the matter that Old Master Mo had asked him not long ago. I know that you must be very busy when you go back. You have to give lectures everywhere. However, since it's a lecture anyway, why don't you come to our school and give a lecture? Our teachers and students have been waiting for you to come for a long time. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It's not a big deal. Old Master Mo waved his hand and said, after the spring festival, I will see when I have the opportunity to go to Yang City next semester. I will tell you in advance that I will give a lecture at Higashiyama University. I'd also like to see what kind of school Danshan University is to be able to nurture you. Chapter 905. Teacher, I won't be joining in the fun with you. The plane landed at Beijing Airport. Although it was early in the night, Poplar Fruit could see the flashing lights of many reporters and interview vehicles through the window. He turned around and smiled at Old Master Mo. After you've attracted the attention of the reporters, Kiki and I will take a flight back to Yangcheng. Kiki, who could finally unbuckle her seatbelt, climbed up from the chair and jumped happily. She imitated her father by placing her arms on the back of the chair to talk. However, the little girl was too short. Even if she jumped, she could not see what was behind the chair. Sigh, why did I take in such a heartless disciple? Old Master Mo shook his head. Although he sighed again and again, he was still smiling brightly. Although he was indifferent to fame and fortune, human nature was a little vain. Old Master Mo was much better than others. Don't jump around. Get ready to go home later. Poplar Fruit smiled and carried Kiki. Haven't you been missing Sister Bebe for a long time? I want to go home. I want to go home. Kiki shouted happily. She had become more lively recently and seemed to have entered the active stage. She did not care about the environment. Her crisp voice rang throughout the cabin. I'll go first. Old Master Mo smiled and waved at Poplar Fruit. He pulled his suitcase and walked forward. His wife and daughter followed him. Old Master Mo's daughter was much older than Poplar Fruit. She smiled and held Kiki's hand. Kiki, remember to come to Annie's house with your father when you're free. Old Master Mo returned home full of praise. Standing in the middle of the cabin, Poplar Fruit could hear the noise outside. Perhaps only the country's leaders had the opportunity to receive such a welcome and interview. It would be a lie to say that he was not envious. Although Poplar Fruit was also pursued by foreign entertainment reporters in Sweden, the honor they brought to Poplar Fruit was very little. Caring about your personal life and caring about your honor were two different things. Kiki, put on your clothes. We're leaving. Poplar Fruit wrapped Kiki in a thick down jacket and a scarf. Papa hug. Kiki didn't like this feeling. Because she was dressed too clumsily, she couldn't even stand properly, so she could only rely on her father to carry her. Poplar Fruit carried his daughter with one hand and dragged his suitcase with the other. He secretly mixed in with the other passengers and left. Up ahead, Old Master Mo and his family were surrounded by layers upon layers of people. They were like dumplings, unable to move an inch. There were also a few scattered reporters who were interviewing some tourists passing by on the same plane. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki, lowered his head, and hurriedly left with his suitcase. He could still avoid the reporters, but if he was entangled with them, he probably wouldn't be able to return to Yangcheng in the middle of the night. Suddenly, Poplar Fruit heard a voice calling out to him. Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit, Wait, can you answer two of her questions? Poplar Fruit didn't stop walking. He pretended not to hear and turned into the connecting passage. At the same time, Kiki, who had been hiding in her father's arms like an ostrich to avoid the cold wind, came out. Her big eyes looked around, and she happily said to her father, "Papa, someone has called Poplar Fruit." Fortunately, Yangwa had already hidden in the transfer tunnel, shaking off the reporters who were about to catch up. He turned his head and smiled at Chi-Chi. "Don't worry about them. But they're called Poplar Fruit." Kiki suspiciously pressed on her father's shoulder and looked back. "If you want to talk to them, you might not be able to go home tonight." Poplar Fruit said to Kiki with a smile. "Kiki, do you want to stay in Beijing?" No. Kiki immediately felt the same hatred as her father. She hugged her father's neck and used the scarf to rub against her father as she shouted, "Kiki wants to go home. It won't be cold when I'm home." Poplar Fruit secretly laughed in his heart. How can it not be cold when I'm home? He heard from Fong Beibei that Yangcheng was also cold because it rained twice during winter. Poplar Fruit sat on the plane back to Yangcheng. The news of him escaping from the reporters was exposed on Weibo. Although this news wasn't eye-catching, and the headlines in the country were all about old Master Mo's return, there were still many netizens who paid attention to Poplar Fruit who cried out that it was a pity. Poplar Fruit's fame overseas was too great. Furthermore, there were netizens overseas who posted videos of Poplar Fruit calmly translating old Master Mo's speech without script. When this video was reposted, it was worshipped by a group of fans. Although there were some who doubted that Poplar Fruit had already translated the speech, this doubt was quickly dispelled by another video. This was a video of old Master Mo being interviewed by a reporter. Poplar Fruit was also translating. Whether it was English, Swedish, Spanish, French, German, Asian languages, Korean, etc., he could easily translate them all. A student from Beijing University who studied languages sighed. This person should only exist in the heavens. It's rare to see someone like him in this world. Poplar Fruit's Weibo followers increased by a lot. This time, a large proportion of them were high-quality and educated fans. This was a rare phenomenon in the era of entertainment to death. This didn't seem to affect Poplar Fruit, because Poplar Fruit was sitting quietly on the plane, watching an in-flight movie with Kiki. He was preparing to return to Yangcheng after watching a pleasant goat movie. However, this seemed to have a strange effect on Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit thought that he had only informed Fong Beibei, and Fong Beibei insisted on picking her up at the airport. Poplar Fruit was afraid that it wouldn't be safe, so he asked Song Juin and Shun Anlin to drive her over. However, this was only Poplar Fruit's assumption. In a newly rented hotel apartment in Yangcheng, Zheng Yujia had just finished showering. She was lying on the bed, scrolling through Weibo on her tablet. As she scrolled through, she saw the news about Poplar Fruit. When she saw the photo of Poplar Fruit hugging Kiki and sneaking away, Zheng Yujia smacked the bed and laughed without caring about her image. He's already so old. He's still so naughty. Zheng Yujia shook her head. Under her shirt, her long, bare legs gently hooked over and kicked her perky butt. This direction must be a turning point, right? Is he coming back to Yangcheng overnight? Zheng Yujia looked carefully at the photo. When she called Poplar Fruit's phone, it was already turned off. It must be. Zheng Yujia checked the nearest flights from Beijing to Yangcheng. She muttered to herself, "Coming back in the middle of the night? Can you get a taxi? It's not safe to bring a child. Forget it. I have nothing to do at night anyway." Zheng Yujia sat up and stretched lazily. Her shirt pulled up, revealing her cute little belly button. "I'll pick you up. I can also try out the new car. This was going to be fun." Chapter 906. We're here. Kiki fell asleep on the way back to Yangcheng. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but take a nap with his daughter in his arms. When the stewardess woke him up to fasten his seatbelt, he looked out the window at the brightly lit city. Yangcheng was already beneath him. After getting off the plane, Poplar Fruit put on his hat and sunglasses and walked close to the wall. He looked around vigilantly, worried that there would be reporters. Luckily, there weren't any. However, when he arrived at the arrival gate, Poplar Fruit's scalp went numb. It wasn't because he saw reporters, but because he saw something even more terrifying. Two women walked towards him at the same time. The one on the right was Fong Beibei. Because of the incident on the internet, she looked a little haggard. However, wearing the same down jacket as the one on Yang Guo's body, her thin body was hidden in the thick clothes, making Yang Guo feel pity for her and want to immediately integrate her into her arms. The one on the left was Zheng Yujie, whom Poplar Fruit didn't expect. What the hell? Why did this sister come out of nowhere? I didn't tell her when I was coming back, right? And she was dressed so beautifully. Dark purple trench coat, red skirt, black stockings, and high heels. She didn't look like a celebrity with her sunglasses. She looked more like a powerful queen. With her figure and appearance, she would be the center of attention wherever she went. She walked towards Poplar Fruit with a cold aura. Poplar Fruit was scared witless and almost ran away. Bro, you're on your own now. Song Jiwen stood at the back and didn't walk towards Poplar Fruit like Fong Beibei. He looked at Zheng Yujie, who was a few steps behind Fong Beibei, and swallowed hard. He recognized Zheng Yujie at a glance. When this big sister queen came to Yangcheng last year, she had completely suppressed him in terms of both her words and her aura. Song Jiwen thought that Poplar Fruit had fallen under Queen Zheng's whip. When Poplar Fruit suddenly said that he was in a relationship with his junior, he couldn't believe his ears. Now, she appeared again. Was this the classic scene of a queen versus a queen? Song Jiwen started to worry about Fong Beibei. What are you talking about? Chun Anlin asked curiously. Let's watch the show. Song Jiwen said. Uncle. Fong Beibei didn't notice Zheng Yujie, who was walking over from the right. She only had eyes for the travel-worn Poplar Fruit. She quickly walked over and threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms. She rested her chin on Poplar Fruit's chest and looked up at him with a sweet smile. Poplar Fruit hugged his girlfriend and forgot about Zheng Yujie. He intimately pushed the suitcase and wrapped his left arm around Fong Beibei. Then he bent down and lowered his head, resting his forehead on her. Fong Beibei's eyes were as clear as water, while Poplar Fruit's eyes were You didn't wipe your eyes when you were sleeping. Fong Beibei giggled. She reached out her right hand and gently pushed Poplar Fruit's head up. She wiped the corner of his eye and brushed away the hard little thing. Ahem. Poplar Fruit looked at her in annoyance. She ruined the good atmosphere. Hee. Is Kiki asleep? Fong Beibei hugged Poplar Fruit and avoided Poplar Fruit's hand that was rubbing her head. She even tiptoed and looked at Kiki, who was sleeping on Poplar Fruit's shoulder. Ahem. Zheng Yujie, who was ignored, had mixed feelings. Although she had thought that she would definitely see Poplar Fruit in Yangcheng, she really didn't expect that her heart would hurt so much when she saw it for herself. Zheng Yujie spent nearly an hour driving from the city center where she lived. Then, she aimlessly went from one airport to another. This time, she spent more than an hour waiting. Her feet hurt from all the walking. Zheng Yujie hated herself for wearing such high heels just to see him. She even regretted coming over to see the man she had waited for so long holding another woman in his arms. Poplar Fruit heard the sound and suddenly remembered that Zheng Yujie was here. Fong Beibei also looked over. She pushed Poplar Fruit in a daze and said, Uncle, let's stand to the side. We're blocking other people's way. Poplar Fruit looked at Zheng Yujie with a bitter smile. Zheng Yujie's face was calm, but her eyes were stubborn as if to say, Even if you chase me away, I won't leave. Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. He let go of the suitcase with his left hand and turned Fong Beibei around. He looked at Zheng Yujie and forced a smile. Baby, let me introduce you. This is Zheng Yujie. I've mentioned her to you before. She's not only my friend, but also my boss. She's the big boss of New Translation Road Publishing House. She just came from Beijing a few days ago. Fong Beibei opened her mouth slightly and looked at Zheng Yujie. Poplar Fruit said to Zheng Yujie, Yujie, this is my girlfriend, Fong Beibei. She's also my junior. By the way, why are you here? Are you going on a business trip somewhere? This question was simply a blatant lie. Anyone could tell that Zheng Yujie's clothes were meant to be used to pick someone up, but he really didn't know why Zheng Yujie was here. Fong Beibei's expression was a little nervous. Zheng Yujia's fashionable dress and curvy figure gave her too much pressure. So big. Fong Beibei looked at Zheng Yujia's bulging chest with some envy and some vigilance. Thinking of her own bean sprout-like figure, she couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. Fong Beibei was looking at Zheng Yujia, and Zheng Yujia was also looking at Fong Beibei. She frowned slightly and sighed in her heart. So young, so pure. Poplar fruit, you damn Lilicon. Why didn't you meet me 10 years ago? Back then, I was also a little beauty with a child's face. The scene became strangely quiet. Poplar fruit scratched his head, not knowing how to deal with this situation. So you're Fong Beibei. Zheng Yujia smiled. She saw Poplar fruit's embarrassment and sighed in her heart. She stood up and said, "You know me?" Fong Beibei asked nervously. Her nervousness was not only shown in her expression, but also in her actions. Subconsciously, she hugged Poplar fruit tightly. "I know. How could I not know?" Zheng Yujia smiled and said, "Everyone in the country knows that you're Poplar fruit's girlfriend. I'm sorry, I didn't inform Poplar fruit beforehand. When I saw the news that he was back, I drove over to pick him up. I didn't expect you to come too. If I knew, I would have gone to pick you up first." Zheng Yujia said with a smile. "We two women can talk together. I have Brother Mosquito and sister-in-law to send me over." Fong Beibei pouted and said in a low voice. Poplar fruit, who was familiar with his girlfriend's habits, knew that the baby was unhappy. Chapter 907. In the end, Fong Beibei was still too young. Facing Zheng Yujia, who seemed to be completely superior to her in both figure and temperament, she was suddenly at a disadvantage. Not only did she feel like crying, but she also almost lost her balance. If it weren't for Poplar fruit holding her tightly, Fong Beibei would have lost her support and fallen to the ground. Poplar fruit frowned and said, "Okay, don't stand here. Mosquito and the others are still waiting for us across the street." Zheng Yujia felt that Poplar fruit was unhappy. She felt a little wronged. "I didn't do anything. Why are you angry at me? I came to pick you up out of kindness. Am I wrong?" However, Zheng Yujia was very strong-willed. She took a deep breath and pretended not to see Fong Beibei's hostility. She smiled and said, "Is that so? That's great. I haven't seen Mosquito in a long time. Do you still live across the street?" Fong Beibei turned to look at Poplar fruit and felt like crying. She pouted her little mouth and seemed to say, "Why does she know so much?" At this time, Poplar fruit seemed to understand something. He held Fong Beibei's hand and squeezed it. He smiled and said, "I don't live there anymore. I moved near the school and live with the baby." Fong Beibei was suppressed by Zheng Yujia and seemed to be unable to speak. Poplar fruit had to speak for her, indirectly declaring his sovereignty on behalf of Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei, who was easy to coax, suddenly changed from teary eyes to smiling eyes. She felt the warmth of Poplar fruit's palm, which made her feel a lot more at ease. When she arrived at Song Jiwen's side, Zheng Yujia smiled charmingly at him. Her red lips, which were lightly painted with lipstick, curled up at an angle. Song Jiwen, on the other hand, took 2 steps back without any backbone. It was not that Zheng Yujia was too beautiful, but Zheng Yujia was too scary. When they lived at Poplar fruit's house, Song Jiwen was bullied by her to the point that he had a shadow in his heart. "Hey, what are you afraid of?" Chen Anlin helped Song Jiwen up and smiled unhappily. She was not as unconfident as Fong Beibei. Little Chili was not afraid of anything. Other than her mother, no woman in the world could control her. Who is this? Song Jiwen, your girlfriend?" Zheng Yujia looked at Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin with a mischievous smile. With Zheng Yujia's eyesight, how could she not see that Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin were not a couple? But she just wanted to tease him. Otherwise, how could she express the depression in her heart that was provoked by Poplar fruit? No, she's just a friend. Song Jiwen quickly clarified. "Oh, right, her name is Chen Anlin." Little did he know that his long-winded clarification in Chen Anlin's eyes was like an explanation that he was worried his sweetheart would misunderstand. Chen Anlin was inexplicably unhappy. She patted Song Ji-win and motioned for him to move aside. You're Jing Yujia? Chun Anlin was a little like a delinquent girl. She half raised her head, mainly because she was not tall enough, and snorted, I heard you're from the capital. What are you doing in Yangcheng? Chun Anlin opened her mouth. Her Mandarin was much better than Song Ji-win's. At least, even if her words were harsh, to Zhang Yujia's ears, it sounded a little like her own local accent. It was very comfortable. After all, the capital and Jin City were not that far apart. Zhang Yujia did not mind Chun Anlin's provocation. She smiled and said, I'm now in Yangcheng and Poplar Fruit's publishing house. I'll be staying in Yangcheng in the future. Little sister Anlin, from your accent, you seem to be from Jin City? Yes, she's from Jin City. Song Ji-win rushed to answer. He almost blurted out the next question. Since you're in Yangcheng, where are you staying? Still at Old Gua's? At Poplar Fruits? Still. The atmosphere at the scene seemed to have frozen. Chun Anlin glared at Song Ji-win as if to say that he had touched the pot that did not boil. Fong Beibei also opened her mouth. She looked at Song Ji-win in disbelief and then turned to look at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit felt a headache. Although he could say that he had a clear conscience, he was worried that his girlfriend would be jealous. Therefore, there were some things that he did not dare to say. But, Mosquito, do you have to trick your teammate like this? Chun Anlin spoke first. What do you mean by staying at Old Gua's? Big Brother Yang's house is so small, and he's staying with Bei Bei. Is this a place where he can stay? Besides, it's not like Big Sister Zheng Yujia can't afford to stay in a hotel. I'll explain to you when we get back. Poplar Fruit lowered his head and whispered into Fong Beibei's ear. He raised his head and smiled. Yes, and the place where I used to live is now for Anlin. Yujia, where are you staying now? When I came, you were still in Sweden. There's no need for you to worry. Zheng Yujia smiled charmingly. Her appearance made Fong Beibei nervous again. She said, I've already rented a hotel apartment in the new city. Every inch of land in the new city was expensive, and renting a place was even more expensive. However, Zhang Yujia did not care about that small amount of money. She just wanted to live comfortably, safely, and conveniently. Biting her lower lip, Fong Beibei finally mustered up her courage. She puffed out her chest and said, So it's like that. It's not far from us. Big Sister Zheng Yujia, if you're free, you can come to our place to eat. Uncle cooks, and his cooking is delicious. Eating was a lie. Telling Zheng Yujia that she needed her permission to eat was the real truth. Fong Beibei held Poplar Fruit's hand and told herself in her heart, Don't be afraid. Even if I'm nothing compared to her, I have Poplar Fruit. Uncle loves me. He's my boyfriend, not yours. How could Zheng Yujia not understand Fong Beibei's thoughts? However, understanding was one thing, but her heart could not help but ache. Thinking back when she came to Yangcheng, she said that she did not want to stay in a hotel. So he gave her the bedroom and went to sleep on the sofa. When she was drunk and unconscious, he was so honest that he did not seem like a man. Not only did he not take advantage of her, he even prepared porridge for her. Zhang Yujia still remembered that although Poplar Fruit was as dumb as a block of wood, his thoughtfulness and gentleness made her, who despised men for more than 20 years, let down her guard. The breakfast he prepared for her, the food he cooked, it was really delicious. She wanted to be pampered by him for the rest of her life. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, his arms were already occupied by another woman, and she was in front of her, smiling and telling her that she was welcome to be a guest at their house. She was just a girlfriend. Why did she already put herself in the position of the hostess? Zheng Yujia suddenly felt very stifled. For the first time in front of her love rival, she fell silent. In the end, she forced a smile and forced herself to maintain her swaying aura, saying, Okay, next time when I come over, Beibei Mimi, open the door. Fong Beibei was still too young. She originally had the upper hand, but Zheng Yujia's words made her nervous. Her brain was like a pile of paste. How could she tell that Zheng Yujia was just forcing a smile? She was still worried. If Zheng Yujia really came, how could she face her? Fong Beibei faintly felt that whatever Duan Xueqing Shiji was just a fleeting cloud. She was her biggest love rival. How could Jung Yujit not feel the same way? Chapter 908. Poplar Fruit didn't know how he got home. Anyway, dealing with the relationship between Zhang Yujia and his girlfriend had already exhausted Poplar Fruit. Compared to his high IQ and super memory, Poplar Fruit's EQ was a bit low. In a short 10 minutes at the airport, Poplar Fruit felt that he had used up more energy than translating a literary work with hundreds of thousands of words. In online novels, the male protagonists of those authors have women on both sides, and they even have a harem. It's really nonsense. Poplar Fruit lamented. Women are so troublesome. It's only me and my baby who are pure and innocent. How nice. After putting Kiki, who was sleeping soundly, on her small bed and covering her with a quilt, Poplar Fruit couldn't find a reason to hide in the bedroom, so he braced himself and walked out. Fong Beibei didn't change her clothes. She sat cross-legged on the sofa and looked at Poplar Fruit with her mouth pouted. For words were written on her face, "I'm not happy." Poplar Fruit walked over and poured a glass of water for her. He held her little hand and asked with a smile, "Baby, are you thirsty?" "I'm not thirsty," Fong Beibei said with her mouth pouted. "Then, are you hungry? I'll cook noodles for you." Poplar Fruit said fawningly, "Don't ask me if I'm hungry. Do you still love me or not?" Fong Beibei went crazy. She threw herself on Poplar Fruit and slapped him. "We're talking like we're rehearsing our lines." Poplar Fruit laughed and hugged his girlfriend's waist. However, he didn't tie her hands and let her vent her dissatisfaction. Okay, of course I love you." Poplar Fruit did not wait for Fong Beibei to become impatient again. He smiled and said, "When did I not love you?" "Then what's the matter with Zhang Yujia tonight?" Fong Beibei asked with a pout. "Didn't I mention it to you before?" Poplar Fruit said, "First of all, you have seen her photo, and I told you that she is my friend and the boss of my publishing house. Have you forgotten? But you didn't say she was so beautiful, and you didn't say she liked you." Fong Beibei said unhappily, "How can I say that someone likes me?" Poplar Fruit pinched Fong Beibei's face, but she shook her head to avoid it. He had no choice but to say, "If I said that, wouldn't I be showing off? There are a lot of fans online who want to marry me." "You're showing off." Fong Beibei bit her lower lip and said, "That's different, okay? She came to pick you up in front of me." Okay. Don't be angry. Didn't I make it clear? I didn't tell her that I was back. I told you the whole world. If it weren't for the reporters, she wouldn't have known that I was back." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "You know, you're the only one in my heart. My mother said that you men always say one thing and mean another," Fong Beibei said with a pout. "Okay, don't think about her anymore. She and I are innocent. We're just friends, as good as mosquitoes." Poplar Fruit held Fong Beibei's hand to his mouth and kissed it. He said, "Whether I say one thing and mean another, how I treat you, don't you feel it yourself?" Fong Beibei was stunned for a moment. She thought that Poplar Fruit was unhappy. She quickly shook her head and said, "It's not that I don't believe you, but didn't Brother Mosquito say that? She used to live with you. I don't feel at ease." "That's true." Poplar Fruit smiled. Seeing that Fong Beibei was nervous again, he explained, "At that time, I didn't know her yet. In order to persuade me to join the translation team of Steve Jobs' biography, she came from Beijing and waited at my door. After discussing with her, it was very late." Poplar Fruit said, "In the middle of the night, I didn't know where to find a hotel for her, so I asked her to sleep in my room, and I slept in the living room. You know the layout of my house. It's very big." "And then?" Fong Beibei asked. "Then she came again. She went to find Mr. M.O. Yin to discuss the publishing rights of his book. I went with her. At that time, I met Mr. Mo," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "This time she came. Because she didn't stay for long, she also stayed at my place." Fong Beibei was very jealous. She sat on one of Poplar Fruit's thighs, and her slender hands were grabbing the zipper of the down jacket. "But you have to have confidence in me." Poplar Fruit took Fong Beibei's hand again and said with a smile, "I didn't do anything to her. I'm such a pure person." Fong Beibei chuckled and patted Poplar Fruit's chest, saying, You say you're pure? Oh, uncle, you're so shameless. Although she was still a little angry, Poplar Fruit felt relieved when Fong Beibei laughed. He began to feel that Fong Beibei was getting easier and easier to coax. She was not like before, when she would be unhappy for a long time because of a small matter. Poplar Fruit didn't know that in fact, it was because the two of them had been through several storms since November. Fong Beibei was getting to know him more and more, so she was more and more relieved. I brought you a gift. Poplar Fruit took out a simple and exquisite wooden box from his suitcase and handed it to Fong Beibei, saying, "Come and see what it is. Don't bribe me with a gift. I'm still angry." Fong Beibei pouted and muttered, but she still took the box. She held it in her arms and didn't want to open it. Poplar Fruit reached out and opened the lid for her. She only saw a thick piece of flannel inside, and on top of it was a crystal clear woman's crown. Wow! Fong Beibei's eyes became crystal clear. Every girl has a princess dream, and such a beautiful crown was what she wanted most when she was a child. It's really made of crystal. Poplar Fruit laughed. I saw it in a jewelry store in Stockholm and wanted to buy a crown in a country where there is still a king. Maybe I can really buy a princess crown back for you. Fong Beibei had already covered her mouth. She was so surprised that she couldn't speak. Do you like it? Poplar Fruit took out the crown, helped her put it on, and asked gently, I like it. When Fong Beibei raised her head, the shyness in her eyes couldn't be concealed. She nodded slightly, blushed, and said, Uncle, do you think it looks good? Poplar Fruit pretended to look at her. Fong Beibei was a little embarrassed and wanted to lower her head. You're quite beautiful, but you're wearing clothes like a country bumpkin. Baby, are you Princess Cinderella? Fong Beibei first took off the crystal crown on her head and carefully put in the box. Then, with a cry, she jumped up and threw herself at Poplar Fruit. You're Cinderella. You're the country bumpkin. Chapter 909. Poplar Fruit came out of the shower and walked into the living room while wiping his hair. He saw Fong Beibei sitting on the sofa, dozing off while hugging the blanket. No wonder Fong Beibei was so sleepy. It was already past 12 o'clock at night. Normally, Fong Beibei would be asleep at this time. But today, because Poplar Fruit came back late, the two talked for a while, and it was already 12 o'clock by the time they finished showering. Baby, why don't you go back to sleep if you're sleepy? Poplar Fruit took the wooden box from her hand and put the crystal crown worth more than 100,000 renminbi on the coffee table. I just dried my hair and was waiting for you, Fong Beibei said tiredly. She stretched out her hands and asked for a hug. Poplar Fruit pulled the blanket away, reached out to her ankles, and easily carried her up. Fong Beibei's arms were around Poplar Fruit's neck, and she snuggled in Poplar Fruit's arms. Poplar Fruit knew that it was very cold in winter. Although the house was air-conditioned, after lifting the blanket, Fong Beibei's body would be exposed to the outside air. He hugged Fong Beibei's body tighter. Back on the bed, Fong Beibei hugged him and lay down on him like a kitten. Poplar Fruit pulled up the space blanket that he had changed into and smiled. Go to sleep. I saw that you were thinner than before I went out. You need to take care of your body. Poplar Fruit avoided the question of Ganjuanji. After all, this matter hurt Fong Beibei too much. Since it was over, Poplar Fruit already had a plan. Poplar Fruit did not intend to mention this person in front of his girlfriend. Fong Beibei suddenly used her elbow as a support and her palm to support her chin. She looked at Poplar Fruit with her big, watery eyes. What are you doing? Poplar Fruit asked in amusement. Say, you men, do you all like big ones? Fong Beibei pouted. Because her chin was propped up, her voice was somewhat muffled as she asked. What big? Poplar Fruit asked, puzzled. Fong Beibei sat up straight. She pouted and gestured in front of her chest. It's that guy from today. Her boobs were already so big. Then, when I went out, I saw many men secretly looking at her. Poplar Fruit understood. He laughed and said, Are you exaggerating? She shouldn't be as old as you said, right? Fong Beibei just gestured the size of half a basketball, which was really exaggerated. Zheng Yujia was indeed a lot bigger than Fong Beibei, but it was not to the extent of being cumbersome. You haven't touched it. How do you know it's not that big? Fong Beibei unhappily said. Although she said so, she was still very nervous. She was afraid that Poplar Fruit would blurt out, "I have touched it. It's just a visual estimation." Poplar Fruit hooked Fong Beibei's neck and hugged her to his chest. He smiled and said, "Okay, stop fooling around." Then you peeked. Fong Beibei patted Poplar Fruit's chest and snappily said, "You still haven't answered me." Fong Beibei moved her head to the pillow. She looked sideways at Poplar Fruit and asked, "Do you men like big?" This should be a serious academic question. Poplar Fruit seriously thought about it and then said, "Not necessarily, right? Research has shown that the beauty of a woman's chest is composed of at least 15 aspects, such as arc, model, bean shape, and so on. A big chest is not necessarily good. If it's sagging, it may not be good." If it was Song Jiwen who answered this question, he would definitely disdainfully say, "A big chest is not necessarily good, but if it's not big, it's definitely not good." Only Poplar Fruit, at this time, would think of the sentences in the literature he read before to explain to his girlfriend. "Aya, you're so annoying." Fong Beibei really liked Poplar Fruit's trick. She slapped Poplar Fruit's chest, then covered her mouth and giggled. "Then tell me, is mine good?" Fong Beibei blushed and said with a voice like a mosquito, "Good. Babies are beautiful everywhere. The most beautiful thing in the world is a baby." Yang Wu's answer to this question was very quick, almost without any hesitation. "Hee, is that so?" Fong Beibei said with a smile, "But I think I'm small." "Not small." Poplar Fruit pretended to be surprised, raised his head and said, "This size is the best." "AI." Fong Beibei bit her lower lip and said shyly, "How do you know the size? Have you seen it?" No, I guessed it." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Baby, don't think too much about this. If you're healthy, everything will be fine." I don't care." Fong Beibei pouted, shook her head, and said, "I want to drink papaya milk. You have to cook it for me tomorrow." Okay. I guarantee that when baby wakes up tomorrow, there will be papaya milk to drink." Poplar Fruit said resolutely. "Uncle, you're so nice." Fong Beibei smiled and hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and whispered coquettishly, "Ahem." Poplar Fruit coughed and said, "Baby, actually, if you want to get bigger, there's a better way than drinking papaya milk." "What way?" Fong Beibei asked in surprise. "There's really no woman who doesn't care about her own figure. Touch and grow bigger." Poplar Fruit held back for a moment, made up his mind, and said, "Swear to God, Poplar Fruit is really not such an impure person. It's just that his recent work required him to read a lot of online novels, causing him to be infected by the wretchedness of online novels." "Cute?" Fong Beibei did not understand and asked. "No, it's touch and grow bigger." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and explained, "It means that if a girl's boyfriend touches her more, it will be easier for her to get bigger." "It's obviously you who wants to touch, isn't it?" Fong Beibei's cheeks flushed. She pinched Poplar Fruit's arm muscles and said coquettishly. Poplar Fruit quickly explained, "There's a scientific basis for this. Touching, it's easier to promote blood circulation and promote the growth of that thing inside. Then it will get bigger. Actually, you can touch it yourself." Poplar Fruit lowered his head in embarrassment. For a long time, Poplar Fruit did not hear any movement from Fong Beibei. She did not even hit him. Poplar Fruit was nervous. He raised his head and was about to apologize. But what he saw was that under the dim yellow light of the bedside lamp, Fong Beibei's face was flushed red. Her hair was messy, and she was biting her lower lip. Her beautiful appearance was like that of a newly married bride whose red veil had just been lifted by the groom. "Uncle, do you really want it?" Fong Beibei was too embarrassed to say the next verb. She blushed and looked at Poplar Fruit with her big, watery eyes. It seemed like it was a very important moment. Poplar Fruit took a deep breath and did not say anything. He only nodded slightly. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's eyes met. The shyness in Fong Beibei's eyes and the affection in Poplar Fruit's eyes almost dyed the whole room an intoxicating pink. Poplar Fruit only felt that his big hand was grabbed by a small hand from below, through a thin layer of cloth, across warm and smooth skin, to the high ground that he had yearned for day and night. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.